fifth place, we have Planet 9. So in April of 2016, the New York Post tweeted that a newly discovered planet could destroy Earth as soon as that month. Now, obviously we're all still here, unless we've been replaced by AI or holograms without my knowledge. Honestly, 2016 was the year I transitioned from high school to university, and 'twas a very chaotic year for me. The newspaper was referring to Planet 9, a theoretical planet at the edge of the solar system. Based on earlier considerations, this hypothetical super-Earth-sized planet would have had a predicted mass of 5 to 10 times that of the Earth, an elongated orbit 400 to 800 times as far from the Sun as the Earth. So expert astronomers have suggested that Planet 9 may be the core of a giant planet that was ejected from its original orbit by Jupiter during the genesis of the solar system, captured from another star, once a rogue planet, or that it formed on a distant orbit and was pulled into an eccentric orbit by a passing star. An accompanying video also claimed that the new planet would be throwing all sorts of asteroids and comets at Earth, which would supposedly end up pummeling our planet. Astronomers are actively looking for it to explain motions of some objects in the icy Kuiper Belt, a vast region of icy objects beyond Neptune. I tried to find a pronunciation for that word, couldn't find it, so if I'm wrong, let me know. And while sky surveys such as Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer, otherwise known as WISE, and Pan-STARRS did not detect Planet 9, they have not ruled out the existence of a Neptune-diameter object in the outer solar system. When the planet is actually found, it will pose no threat to us, according to the California Institute of Technology's Mike Brown, who was one of the original backers of the Planet 9 theory. While it doesn't have an official moniker right now, it will likely be a name chosen from Roman or Greek mythology. Let me know in the comments what you think it should be, officially named. I personally think Dolos, the spirit of trickery, since NASA seems to want to keep this planet their little secret. In fourth place, we have the McMinnville UFO sighting. Widely regarded by UFOologists to have produced the most important photographs of a UFO, the McMinnville sighting became famous at the height of the 1950s UFO craze. Paul Trink captured the images on camera after his wife, Evelyn, spotted a slow-moving metal disc while feeding the rabbits on their farm. The images went on to be printed in Life magazine. The pair maintained that they had seen a genuine UFO until their deaths, repeating the tale for the Oregonian in 1997, year I was born. Now, before someone starts asking what this has to do with NASA, it absolutely has everything to do with them. They're the ones who cover up UFO sightings and proof. And if you remember, my last point, I'm pretty sure they have a hand in covering up government proof as well. Now, to elaborate on this event, Evelyn Trent started yelling for her husband at about 7:45 p.m. on the evening of May 11th, 1950. She was feeding the rabbits in the yard of the couple's Dayton farm when she saw what she described as a good-sized parachute canopy without the strings. Only silver, bright, mixed with bronze. She later elaborated that it was as pretty as anything she ever saw. Evelyn ran into the house, found her husband and their camera, and the duo raced back into the yard. Paul Trent also spotted what he described as a round, shiny, wingless object hovering in the sky. The 43-year-old farmer managed to take 2 photographs before the flying object disappeared into the evening mist. Fun fact, they're the most famous photos ever to come out of Yamhill County. The McMinnville Telephone Register and the Oregonian published the images in June of 1950, a month after Paul Trent took them. So the delay was because he had to finish off the roll before getting the images developed. Such a struggle sometimes. Life magazine followed the Oregon newspapers, offering its national audience, a gander at the unidentified flying object. Soon, because of this, a U.S. Air Force investigator came to the Trent farm, and while explaining the event to the officer, Paul said that the object was coming in towards them and seemed to be tipped up a little bit. He emphasized it was very bright, almost silvery, and made no noise. The investigator had heard such stories before, since once again, this was the golden age of UFO sightings. But while most alien craft tales are easily debunked after being discovered to be weather balloons or private planes or obvious hoaxes, that wasn't the case with the Trent's photos. In 1967, the Air Force commissioned prominent nuclear physicist Edward U. Condon to lead an exhaustive UFO study. The 950-page report, exhaustive, titled Scientific Study of Unidentified Flying Objects, easily dismissed most of the reported sightings, but it stated at least one, showing a disc-shaped object in flight over Oregon, is classed as difficult to explain in a conventional way. The study determined that the photos were genuine and the Trents were truthful. It specifically declared that this is one of the few UFO reports in which all factors investigated from genetic to psychological and physical appear to be consistent with the assertion that an extraordinary flying object, silvery metallic disc-shaped, tens of meters in diameter, and evidently something, flew within sight of 2 credible witnesses. So explain to me why NASA has never released a statement on this? They're keeping pretty dang quiet, and so is everyone else. What can I say? Secrets make me cranky. In third place, we have life on Venus. So back in the 1970s and 1980s, the Soviet Union sent several uncrewed missions to study the planet Venus. 10 of these Venera probes landed on the surface of the planet and were able to transmit data and images for a few minutes before succumbing to the planet's extreme atmosphere. In 2012, the Russian news service RIA Novosti reported that Leonid, I cannot say his last name but it starts with a K, a scientist who worked on the Venera missions, suggested that the photographs showed living objects moving around on the planet's surface. According to Leonid, certain objects resembled a disk, a black flap, and a scorpion, which emerge, fluctuate, and disappear, referring to their changing location on photographs and traces on the ground. The editors of Solar System Research published an editorial comment and a number of commentary articles from other scientists in their September of 2012 publication of Issue 5, Volume 46 of the journal, to be specific. The issue also includes a second article from Leonid, in which he claims to identify several other life forms and speculates regarding the apparent rich diversity of life around the landing site. It's a lot more rare to get alien spottings from folks outside of the US, and I feel like NASA is just out there covering them up. So I'm glad this one made it to the interwebs, even though folks have tried to explain it away. In second place, we have a government whistleblower. Alrighty. Before I get into it, I'd like to elaborate on how credible this story is. So, the whistleblower in question, David Charles Grush, is a veteran of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, or NGA, and the National Reconnaissance Office, NRO for short, where he served as a representative to the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force from 2019 to 2021. From late 2021 to July of 2022, he was the NGA co-lead for UAP analysis and its representative to the task force led by the Department of the Navy, under the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. Whew. At the NGO, David served as a Senior Intelligence Capabilities Integration Officer, cleared at the Top Secret Compartment Information level. From 2016 to 2021, he served with the National Reconnaissance Office as Senior Intelligence Officer and led the production of the NRO Director's Daily Briefing. He was a GS-15 civilian, the military equivalent of a colonel, and has numerous awards and decorations for his participation in covert and clandestine operations to advance American security. I don't know about y'all, but I think this is our most credible witness yet. So David said the recoveries of partial fragments through and up to intact vehicles have been made for decades through present day by the government, its allies, and defense contractors. He said that craft recovery operations are ongoing at various levels of activity, and that individuals on these UAP programs have approached him in his official capacity and disclosed their concerns regarding a multitude of wrongdoings, such as illegal contracting against the federal acquisitions regulations, and other criminality and the suppression of information across a qualified industrial base and academia. Associates who vouched for David said his information was highly sensitive, providing evidence that materials from objects of non-human origin are in the possession of highly secret black government programs. Wow. Multiple government witnesses to boot. Although locations, program names, and other specific data remain classified, the Inspector General and Intelligence Committee staff were provided with these details. Analysis has determined that the objects retrieved are of non-human origin based on the vehicle morphologies and material science testing and the possession of unique atomic arrangements and radiological signatures. The investigation was centered on extensive interviews with high-level intelligence officials, some of whom are directly involved with the program, and they corroborated his information. David is certain that the information has been illegally withheld from Congress to intentionally thwart legitimate congressional oversight of the UAP program. He has also filed a complaint alleging that he suffered illegal retaliation for his confidential disclosures. In his statements, David claimed that UFO legacy programs have, long been concealed within multiple agencies, nesting UAP activities in conventional secret access programs, without appropriate reporting to various oversight authorities. According to the unclassified complaint, in July of 2021, he had confidentially provided classified information to the Department of Defense Inspector General concerning the withholding of UAP-related information from Congress. Christopher Mellon, who spent nearly 20 years in the U.S. intelligence community and served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, has worked with Congress for years on unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP for short. He has mentioned that a number of well-placed current and former officials have shared detailed information with him, including the location where a craft was abandoned and recovered. He claims the reason more folks haven't come forward is due to a lack of trust in the leadership of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, established by Congress. The assumption that the United States alone has bullied the other nations into maintaining the secrecy for nearly a century continues to uphold as the primary consensus amongst the public at large. So you're telling me that credible US government officials have been adamant that the government is hiding things? Sounds right to me. In first place, we have Viking lander aliens. A woman who claims to be a former NASA employee claims to have seen evidence of the most monumental cover-up in space history back in 1979, when she saw two human figures in spacesuits walk calmly towards the Viking lander across the Martian surface. Going by Jackie, she claimed to have been working for NASA, handling downlink telemetry from the lander, which was the first vehicle to send back images of Mars' surface, when she saw 2 people walking on the surface. She and 6 colleagues were watching the Viking rover, bustling about all over various screens when she spotted 2 men in spacesuits, which were not the bulky suits that they normally used at the time, but looked safe. They came over the horizon, walking, right to the Viking Explorer. Naturally, some folks have claimed that the humans may have just been there to polish the lander's solar panels, but that seems a little odd, considering if there were, just humans there, they could have just filled the lander with petrol instead, or take the photographs themselves. Jackie claims that while the folks were maintaining the equipment, their video feed was suddenly cut off without explanation, and when they rushed upstairs for answers, the door leading to the room controlling the equipment was locked, with paper taped over every crevice to avoid anything being seen. Hello? Suspicious red flag alert. If you don't understand how scary cover-ups are and why this is ranked so highly, then I worry about how blasé you are. Other theorists claim there were secret landings on Mars in the 60s, and the Apollo landings were actually a cover-up for wider exploration of the solar system. Former CIA pilot John Lear claims that NASA landed on Mars in 1966, and that humans adapted to breathe the thin Martian atmosphere. Nigel Watson, author of the Haynes UFO Investigations Manual, said that these accounts of secret space missions seem to be growing in number, and remind him of the infamous Project Serpo. Yep, I'll sidetrack. In November 2005, a contact called Anonymous, who said they worked for the US Defense Intelligence Agency, started sending information about an extraordinary alien exchange program called Project Serpo. Basing his claims on a 3,000-page document written in the late 1970s, he boldly claimed that 6 aliens were recovered from the Roswell crash. Claims that aliens living and or dead were recovered from the Roswell crash are nothing new, but in this case it was stated that an alien survivor from the crash, called EBE-1, helped to organize 12 specially trained people to visit his home planet, Serpo, in the Zeta Reticuli solar system. This mission occurred in 1965 and they remained there until 1978. During their stay, 2 of them died, 2 remained on the planet, and the rest, after returning to Earth, have died because of the high levels of radiation they were exposed to. I'm just saying, NASA has admitted that there are many things out there that we do not know about, and that UFOs are indeed real. So, what other secrets are they hiding? I swear between them and the US government, I wish I could file a million Freedom of Information pieces.
Number 5. Bones on Mars. We are just desperate to find some proof of there being life on Mars. More than anything, we just want to know if there's anybody else out there with us. We want to know if there's aliens coming in from other galaxies, but I think more importantly, we want to look in our own solar system first. Be an awfully lonely galaxy otherwise. And while we haven't had a manned mission yet to Mars, thanks to telescopes and rovers, we've been able to get a pretty good look at the surface of it to better our understanding. Recently, a photo taken from the Curiosity rover reignited the search, and alien enthusiasts were excited when it looked like a photo of a human bone was taken from the surface of Mars. It shows a collection of rocks, half buried in dust, and one in particular immediately jumps out, looking like a femur bone, even possibly a human femur bone. However, excitement dwindled pretty soon when, like most cases, like the face on Mars and that statue that looked like it might have been a human woman on Mars, it turned out to be little more than a coincidence. The bone? Well, it turns out it's not much more than a rock that just happens to look like a bone, and our eyes and desire to see patterns where there aren't patterns can trick us all. It was shaped through erosion caused by the wind. Now, NASA is more than aware how much we're all jumping at the bit for proof of aliens, so they even issued a statement about this picture. If life ever existed on Mars, scientists expect that it would be small, simple forms called microbes. Mars likely never had enough oxygen in its atmosphere to support more complex organisms. Thus, large fossils are not likely. Now, it does bear mentioning too that the rock bone actually doesn't look, exactly like a human femur when you really look at it, but hey, that's probably why we thought it was an alien after all. And if you're looking for more scary stuff from outer space, aliens, cryptids, SCPs, and way more, basically everything scary under the sun, toss a subscribe our way and stay spooked all night long. Number 2, cracking the glass. It must be so odd being in space, floating around in all that nothingness. Even weirder on a space station. You're out in the vast, unending cosmos, and you know that the only thing that's keeping you alive is being inside this box, and that the environment around you cannot support you at all. And you are lost in a sea of stars, very far away from home. I'm not sure how you could ever get used to calling that home. I've got nothing but respect for the astronauts on the ISS. That stuff would stress me out so much I don't think I'd ever get a good night's sleep. I would be way too worried at all times that all it would take is one little thing to go wrong and it would all be over. Well, the ESA, that's the European Space Agency, tweeted a photo out a little bit ago of a crack in the window of the ISS, which is a nail-chomping sight. The damage was caused by a floating piece of debris that collided into the observatory observatory of the ISS. The chip that did this damage was only about a quarter of an inch. And while it looks incredibly unnerving, and if I saw it while I was serving in the space station, I would probably sweat bullets, the ESA reassures everyone that the damage doesn't actually pose a threat. Now, the unnerving part to me is that they speculate that the object that damaged the window could have been something as small as a flake of paint that came off the ISS and collided with the window. A flake of paint did that! If your first thought was, well, what about something ever so slightly larger, the ESA has the same worry, and has said that a piece of debris larger than 4 inches would be enough to completely shatter a satellite or a spacecraft wide open. That would probably prevent me from ever getting a good night's sleep, knowing that there's always a possibility something tiny could tear a hole open and have everyone sucked into space. Sweet dreams! The threat of space debris is a growing concern for NASA and the ESA and other space organizations, as debris keeps getting lost up there and isn't getting taken away. Nobody's taking out the cosmic trash. We've already messed Earth up pretty bad. It would be a galactic embarrassment if we trash up the stars. So next time they send some astronauts up there, bring a dirt devil or something. Maybe vacuum something up. Do your part. Number 3, dying star. When you're looking at a star, you're actually looking at a star as it was about 4,000 years ago. It's kind of out of date by the time you saw it. The speed of light, very, very fast, but it's not that fast. You see, stars live for hundreds upon millions of years, so when we're looking at them, they're practically an infant in the cosmic sense. But have you ever wondered what it might look like when a star does die? When a star finally croaks and kicks that celestial bucket? Well, thanks to billions of dollars in telescope technology, we can scratch that curiosity. Before the James Webb Telescope stomped onto the scene and stole the hearts and mind of the space community, the Hubble telescope was still the #1 name to trust in the big telescope community. It was capturing all sorts of dazzling and delightful images, including this lovely one of the star CW Leonis, captured as it was dying. And nobody did anything to help. You just watched it. Oh, these people. Have you ever seen a dying star? I definitely haven't, and it is as ethereally beautiful as I could have imagined, but also like wildly scary in a sort of cosmic horror way, you know? And that sort of we're so small in the galaxy kind of way. It looks like a cosmic web, kind of like a fractal galactic spider web, and that's a great album name if you want to give that out there. It looks to me like staring into the eye of a Lovecraftian god, some being that's existed before the dawn of time. Makes me feel like I'm gonna get driven to just a little bit of madness if I stare at it too long. So I'm not a rocket scientist, or a scientist, or really even that smart about anything, but I could do my best to try and explain what's going on here. The cobwebs that you can see floating around the star are carbon absorbing the dying star, and the outer layers of the star are being sucked into the black void of space. And where that goes from there, could not tell you, but it's probably just as terrifying to even consider. Anyway, can't tell you too much more. Like I said, I'm no scientist. I'm just a reasonably charismatic YouTube host who can tell you when something looks cool. And this star looks pretty cool. Jack-o'-lantern sun. Hey, it's not just people who can dress up for Halloween. We've all seen dogs in hilarious Halloween costumes, and now even the stars want to get in on the celebrations. NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory captured a fascinatingly spooky looking image of our beloved celestial body, the sun, on October 8th of 2022, taking a photo of the sun seemingly wearing a Halloween costume of a jack-o'-lantern for the season. Just beautiful, really. Now, again, I'll do my best to explain what's happening here, but I'll be completely candid. I'm just writing down some words that I read on a NASA website, and I'm not 100% that I actually know what any of these mean, but I'll say them anyway for you. The active regions are areas of greater light and energy that appear in SDO images to flame outwards from the sun. This image has been edited slightly to highlight the ultraviolet active regions, since our regular eyes can't see ultraviolet light that easy. Does this mean this is what the sun has been looking like this entire time, and I just don't have the insight to know about the face on the sun? NASA shared this particularly festive image with the title Pumpkin Sun, and I think it's pretty easy to see where they're coming from in this one. This one straight up looks like just a giant cosmic jack-o'-lantern. The lights form 2 eyes, it's got a little nose and a wide, jagged, smiling mouth. Kinda makes it seem like there was a giant cosmic pumpkin carving contest out there in the skies. I kinda wish we could get this permanent for like the months of October. Would love to look up in the sky and I see a giant face staring back at me like I live in Clocktown from Majora's Mask. Yeah, this isn't the scariest point on this list, I can admit that, but it's a darn good photo and I think that's worth showcasing enough, is it not? And I mean, really, imagine looking up into the sky and seeing that looking back at you. I feel like you would assume it was the end of days and it was gonna start raining fire down upon the heavens. At number 1, that's no moon. Now what you're looking at right now is a picture of Saturn's moon, Mimas. And I know what you're thinking. thinking, that's no moon, that's a space station. As the moon Mimas is a dead ringer for the fully operational mobile star crusher, the Death Star. An asteroid crater left in the side of the giant rock has left it permanently looking like the infamous Imperial Space Station. Now, while something looking like the Death Star is more than interesting enough to me, what's truly interesting here is that astronomers believe they might have found proof that this Death Star ironically might be hiding a bit of life beneath its surface, hiding an ocean just under the satellite's crust. Recently, researchers studying Mimas have discovered that there is a strange wobble effect in the moon's rotation, and research data has shown and suggested that the wobble is caused by the sloshing of liquid ocean just beneath the icy surface of the 246-mile diameter moon, Big Moon. Now, if this is true, this would be huge shakes. Water on any other planet is very exciting since, you know, not to speculate too wildly, it could be proof of life on another planet. Even small and microbial would still be an earth-shattering revelation since it would count as alien life. Since this discovery, scientists are starting to look at Mimas differently, since if this was true, it could mean this hunk of rock is a whole new type of world altogether. The possibility that it can sustain life and that our solar system might be a little more occupied than we'd previously thought, well, that would change everything. That's all we've been looking for in any of these videos, proof of alien life somewhere. Now, as far as I can tell, it doesn't look like Mimas has a giant laser capable of destroying a planet, so it's a fair bit nicer than the real Death Star, and hopefully they didn't make the same engineering mistakes and there's no structural ports or, what was it called? No, I'm embarrassing myself as a Star Wars fan. What he shot the torpedo into. We all know what I'm talking about. When Luke shot the torpedo in, it doesn't have that. That's what I'm trying to get at. Anyway, hopefully there is something hiding beneath that ice. I feel like that'd be a pretty good cosmic twist if we spent all this time thinking Mars is going to be where we found the aliens, and then it turns out it's the Death Star, the thing from Star Wars where we find our alien friends. That's poetry.
At number 5 is advanced alien technology. Before you guys come at me and call me some sci-fi nut, hear me out. For aliens to get to Earth, they would need highly complex and state-of-the-art technology to create spacecrafts that safely take them from galaxy to galaxy. While this is something most people are aware of, the true nature of alien technology still remains a secret. In the momentous Grush hearing, he goes on to explain that the United States government is currently harboring and hiding alien technology and life. He claimed that the US has retrieved multiple crashed UFOs, some with aliens still inside, and upon retrieval, they picked them apart in order to research their technologies. However, we still have zero information on what exactly they've found and what futuristic technical knowledge they have attained. We have a general idea of the great danger that we may be in when in contact with an alien threat, but the full extent of that danger remains hidden. We can only assume that the US is in the process of deciphering the secrets to making our own UFOs, which we could use to explore other planets within and outside our solar system, and perhaps even colonize them. But we might not have to wait for very long before we discover what it is we know and what it is we don't know. Harvard professor Avi Loeb has been in Papua New Guinea investigating a meteor that crashed in the neighboring ocean in 2014. This specific meteor was of great interest, as when it crashed, it moved at speeds that are too fast for it to be gravitationally bound to the sun, and that the material it's made of was significantly tougher than that of other meteors. These traits indicate that the meteor could in fact be some sort of spacecraft or piece of alien technology. Upon finally finding the interstellar rock, Loeb and crew found microscopic, marble-like objects made of an alloy never before seen in our solar system. If these small marbles are confirmed to be artificial, then we could be stumbling upon the first confirmed pieces of genuine extraterrestrial technology. My theory? These are alien microplastics, or at least some sort of equivalent. The microscopic size of these marbles can indicate that these are only smaller, broken down versions of pre-existing technology or items that aliens might use. If this is the case, then hopefully scientists will find a way to reverse engineer these small alien spheres and discover their true origins. Coming up next, at number 4, is panspermia. Deriving from the ancient Greek words pan, meaning all, and sperma, meaning seed, panspermia is a hypothesis created by the Greek philosopher Anaxagoras in the 5th century BC. It states that life exists all across the universe, as it has been distributed by space dust, meteoroids, asteroids, and of course different spacecrafts carrying bacteria and other microorganisms. Hence the name panspermia. It means that the seeds of life are spread all across the universe. All, pan, seed, spermia, Yeah, you get it. While the concept of panspermia emerged thousands of years ago, its relevance to our understanding of extraterrestrial life is as vibrant as ever. In recent space exploration missions, the European Space Agency's ExoMars rover and NASA's Perseverance rover have been equipped with instruments built specifically to analyze the surface of Mars for signs of life that has found itself on the planet through space dust, comets, and all those other fun space things. Furthermore, advancements in space exploration have led to discovery of something called extremophiles, resilient microorganisms that thrive in the extreme environments on Earth and other places in space. Their existence on Earth indicates that life can also thrive on the harsh environments of other planets. The most well-known example of an extremophile, you might have heard of them, is the tardigrade, better known as a water bear. These 8-legged microanimals are thought to be one of the most resilient life forms known. They are capable of surviving extreme temperatures, pressures, air deprivation, high amounts of radiation, dehydration, and starvation. In fact, tardigrades are so resilient that they're capable of surviving the cold, dark vacuum of space. If animals that can survive in space already exist on Earth, imagine how many other tardigrade-like species exist on other planets, opening the door for panspermia across the universe. Who knows, maybe there are plenty of extremophilic aliens on Earth already. We've just been looking in the wrong places. And at number 3 is going to be life on Mars. The existence of life on Mars is certainly not a new concept to anyone, especially with the discovery of water on the red planet, which is widely considered in the scientific community to be a necessary foundation for the development of life. However, even with all these findings, NASA claims to be incapable of finding actual life on Mars. But that might be because it's already found its way to Earth 13,000 years ago. Alan Hill's 84001, or just ALH 84001 for short, is an ancient meteorite discovered in Antarctica in 1984. The remarkable rock, ejected from the Martian surface 4.1 billion years ago, has offered many clues towards the existence of life hidden beneath our solar neighbor's surface. In 1996, a team of scientists led by David McKay of NASA's Johnson Space Center announced their discovery of intriguing fossil-like microstructures and features within the meteorite. These fossils imply that life on Mars did in fact exist, just long before humanity. And this isn't the only proof. In 1976, the United States landed 2 of their own Viking landers, making them the first US spacecrafts to land on the red planet. The crafts would be the first to take high-resolution images of the planet and analyze a variety of the planet's features. But most importantly, an examination of the Martian soil tested positive for metabolism, which heavily suggests the presence of life. Theories of them hiding the alien race to Martians having been long extinct, and that the red planet's desolate nature is caused by it being the ruins of a once vivacious planet. But what do you guys think? Is life currently on Mars? Has it already gone extinct? Or maybe there are already Martians hidden among us right now? Tell me in the comments. At number 2 is life across the solar system. Immanuel Kant, the renowned 18th century philosopher, posited a compelling argument regarding the potential existence of alien intelligence in his work titled Universal Natural History and Theory of the Heavens, which is probably the coolest book name ever, but I digress. Kant states that the universe is so vast that the existence of aliens is certain. I mean, there are just so many stars and planets that at least one of them has to sustain life, right? It was his ideas that laid the groundwork for modern discussions on the existence of extraterrestrial life. The Drake equation, formulated by astrophysicist Frank Drake in 1961, complements Kant's theories by providing a more mathematical approach to estimate the number of alien civilizations in our galaxy that might be capable of communication. The equation factors in various variables, such as the rate of star formation, the fraction of stars with planets, the number of habitable planets per star, the fraction of planets where life emerges, and the longevity of technologically advanced civilizations. With the hundreds of billions of stars within our galaxy, along with the recent discoveries of exoplanets around those stars, there are certainly countless habitable worlds scattered throughout the Milky Way. In fact, life could exist within our very solar system. Beyond just Mars and its many riverbeds and subsurface water ice, there's Enceladus and Titan, moons of Saturn. These moons both have subsurface oceans, lakes, rivers, and seas beneath their icy crusts, making them potential hotbeds for life. Some scientists have even observed on Titan that there may be living cells deep within its seas, making it home to several microbial Saturnian species. It's kind of a mouthful. Another theory of Kant's was that aliens' intelligence becomes more intelligent the further we are from the star that we orbit, meaning that planets like Mercury and Venus would not be likely to hold intelligent life, but planets like Saturn and Neptune hold highly intelligent life. Now, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but humans are already a very smart species. But if Kant's theory is correct, then that would make us the dumb ones in the solar system. Us, the dumb ones. What the hell? Anyway, at number 1 is the WOW signal. With the confirmation of alien life on Earth and its existence on other planets within our solar system, there is not a single doubt in my mind that aliens populate not only our galaxy, but the entire depths of space. However, what NASA doesn't want you to know is that we've actually been directly contacted by aliens nearly half a century ago. On August 15th, 1977, astronomer Jerry R. Amon, I probably pronounced that wrong, would find something incredible while working on this search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI for short, project at Ohio State University. Using the university's Big Ear radio telescope, he was able to intercept a mysterious and strong radio signal coming from the Sagittarius constellation, which lasted for 72 seconds and displayed characteristics suggesting an artificial source. Any Sag fans watching right now? The signal got its name because after Amon discovered it, he would circle it and write "wow" in big letters next to it. What makes it so fascinating are its unique characteristics. It was a narrow band radio signal, meaning it was confined to a very specific range of radio frequencies. Natural cosmic sources do not emit signals in such a narrow range, making the signal's origin almost certainly alien. Moreover, the signal's intensity varied significantly during its brief appearance, suggesting a point source moving relative to the telescope. The immediate assumption at the time was that this signal was caused by a passing satellite, but extensive research and attempts to recreate the signal has shown that it is impossible to recreate by human means. Unfortunately, the signal was so seemingly random that it is undecipherable, and humanity has yet to receive such a signal since. But with all these aliens close to us already, I have no doubt the ones way far out will contact us again soon. Let's just cross our fingers and hope they're friendly. If one thing is certain, it's that we're going to be interacting with alien life a whole lot more in the near future, and I'm all here for it. But what about you guys? Does the very idea of talking to an alien make you froth at the mouth? Or are you more in the camp of not caring about aliens because life is already too busy to be worrying about these kinds of things? Either way, this seems to be an issue that will only get more and more prevalent as time passes.
Number 5, Bonita Springs, Florida. Our first clip today is going to be coming to us from the UFO subreddit, because really, where else? The UFO subreddit is doing more to get alien content out in the open than any world government is willing to, so if they're not going to do it, we gotta let the guys online pick up the slack. This clip was posted to us from user Marcus1640, who had this to say. Well, let's roll the clip though first, I think. I was working in my garage, which is about 100 feet west of this camera location, doing the things you do to keep the wife happy. The sky's clear, and out the corner of my eyes, I see this bright ball getting bigger and bigger. It was really bright and then faded away fast. It wasn't a meteor, and I checked planes live, nothing was close. I'm in Florida, so this stuff is pretty common, but this was weird. And no noise. Now in the clip it can be a bit hard to see, so I'll guide you through this definitely as well, because it isn't black and white, which does take away some of it. But we see a bright light up in the sky that comes into frame, hovers around a little bit, it kind of seems like it's scoping out the situation, and then flies out of frame after, I guess, it decides there's nothing happening. Now OP said that the ball of light when he saw it come into frame was this shining, radiant orange, impressively bright in the night sky. Obviously, that doesn't translate super well, so we have to use our imagination just a little bit, you know, close your eyes and imagine it's bright and orange. Wow, what a lovely shade you used. Now some speculation in the comment section of Reddit had people wondering if possibly this could be something like space debris burning up on re-entry, or a satellite reflecting the sunlight down to Earth for but a second. Pretty difficult to tell from here, but that's the way it goes with the paranormal sometimes. Nothing can ever be so easy, and would we really want it to be? I think we should have to fight for it just a little bit. Fight to get the truth out there. And as usual, my friends, if you're looking for more UFO sightings and content, I have a pretty good idea of where you can find more of it. We've got 8 parts worth of UFO sightings from 2023 alone. If you haven't clicked on through yet, you gotta catch up. And if UFO videos aren't your jam and you clicked on this out of accident, we've got loads more scary content for you, ranging from the macabre and mysterious to the outright horrific and hard to believe. Click on through and find something to scream at, and subscribe and help us out. Mean a lot from old Tay. Number 4, the Netherlands. Our next sighting is gonna come to us from the Netherlands. Seems even aliens can't resist hitting up Amsterdam. Let's roll the clip first to get your eyes on it, and then we're gonna take a quick listen to the description posted by its witness, who's remained anonymous. Just before 6 p.m. in front of the cinema in Scheveningen? There's no way I'm pronouncing that right. I noticed this object. While viewing this object, it almost did not move at all. In the entire 20 minutes I was there, the object floated very slowly once to the left and right, and then twice up and down. The shape remained exactly the same throughout. The size remained the same regardless of whether or not this object moved up, down, left, or to the right, and there were no lights to be seen on it. Everything was completely black, and it looked like there was a smudge in the sky. In terms of height, this is unfortunately impossible for me to estimate. But there were several people who, like me, took photos and videos. The object was visible for about 20 minutes. Now the video we've included was pretty short. In fact, those 10 seconds were all that was in that video anyway. But when that video was posted to Reddit, it was corroborated by a few other sources who had all seen the same thing and posted similar videos. Meaning, this isn't some CGI trick, or if it is, a lot of people are in on this conspiracy. So what do we think this could possibly be? The usual suspect of it being a strange blimp or a balloon is always a possibility, and I've seen enough of these videos now that I'm always instantly like, this is probably just a balloon, isn't it? But it's still very, very weird. So, let me know down below what you think. I love hearing from you guys about what you think on all this. Number 3, Phoenix, Arizona. This next clip was first posted to TikTok, but since being posted there has been making the rounds across the web since it's got UAP enthusiasts like yours truly peering their eyes open and gluing them to the screen. Let's take a look and you'll all tell me what you think, okay? Now whatever is going on in there is definitely odd. That much I can say with absolute certainty. There's something up there in the clouds that's floating above almost menacingly, maybe that's just me, and it's flashing a light brightly, and I swear it almost looks like it's turning invisible over and over again. The thing seems to be slowly moving across the sky in a way that makes it look like it's scanning the surroundings. Naturally, commenters went a bit wild with this clip, speculating like I am now. Some suggested that this could be something like hyper advanced military technology being tested out in the field, which would definitely be exciting, and honestly, more probable than not, I feel like there's a lot the government don't tell you about what they're working on. The CIA themselves even said that they think most alien sightings in the 50s and 60s were just reports of the U-2 spy craft. Others suggested that this could be something as dull as a civilian drone being flown around in the sky with a lighting rig attached for no other purpose than to drum up attention and get some TikTok views. But do you really think someone would do that? Someone would go on the internet and just lie for attention? I don't know. Meanwhile, more than a few people on the original TikTok were very convinced that this was a proper UAP alien sighting and could have been an alien visitor caught on tape. Comment section, I'm gonna toss this one over to you as always. Me, personally, I'm a little inclined to believe this might be a boring one. This could just be a drone, just because I'm not so sure that our alien visitors would give themselves away so easily by attaching lights to their crafts and letting themselves get identified. Definitely smaller than a plane, but a lot bigger than drones. They had no lights, no wings, no windows, and no propellers. They also made no noise. These objects look much bigger in real life than they did in the video. On film, they appear to be black, but in real life, I would say they had a color similar to a cloud. Not quite white, but not quite gray either. They looked to be spheroid or tic-tac shaped, and they looked solid and metallic. They seemed like they had smoke coming out of them sometimes, but it was hard to know if that was just them moving through the clouds, causing an effect that looked like smoke. In terms of height, they were flying about twice the height of a typical city building, definitely lower than a plane would have. Also, may I just say, as someone who watches a lot of UFO clips, to be able to find one that is clear as day, filmed on a high quality camera, recorded for a good amount of time, and also had a lot of context provided, put this thing in a museum. That is 1 in a billion. I don't even care if these things aren't aliens. Those three qualities are more exciting than aliens to me. Now, when this clip was posted to Reddit, there were a few people speculating that these could be balloons, despite the original poster pointing out that they thought the things were emanating smoke, so it's, no pun intended, a bit up in the air what these things might be. We get reports of cuboid or tic-tac-like UFOs a lot in this video series, which does make me think there's something suspicious going on if so many people report on similar objects like that, but we still don't have any answers. I hope we get there someday. I know the truth is out there. Number 1, Hollywood. Our final entry for this video is going to come to us from Hollywood. Even aliens like the tourist hotspots. Let's roll the clip and I'll add the commentary and speculation afterwards, because this one's a good one. There's a reason I saved it for the last. Now, the original poster and uploader stated, "We noticed this huge object in the sky just sitting there by the Hard Rock Casino in Hollywood, Florida." Whoa, 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 stop the track, stop the video. Are there 2 Hollywoods? I'm a Canadian, so I don't know these things. Is Florida in LA? You guys have to fix that for me. Okay, moving back. Anyway, the object blurred itself out when we started recording it. It was huge. It didn't do much, but it just sort of sat there and blurred itself out. I have tried to Google to find out what it was, but I'm coming up with nothing. It was my husband, my 2 kids, and I who witnessed this together. Now, I gotta admit, this is one of the most compelling bits of UFO evidence I have seen in a minute. Not to throw the other 4 clips under the bus, they're all very lovely in their own way, and I hold them all in my heart dearly, but this one, oh baby, this is the golden ticket. I'm sure there might be a reasonable explanation for it, but on first glance, this thing looks like the definitive flying saucer. Like if you close your eyes and imagine a flying saucer, you start imagining this. It even looks like if you're watching this thing with eagle eyes that the saucer at one point cloaks, and the original poster mentions that it was blurring itself out when they started recording. Very interesting to me. That would explain a lot over the years if aliens have been specifically constructing their crafts to blur them out from being recorded by cell phones. I mean, imagine aliens keep coming to Earth just for like vacation, and they're getting so annoyed that they're trying to just have some fun, be tourists, and people cannot stop taking photos of them, so they're blurring out their crafts. So what do we think, my ghouls and goblins? Is this recording simply too good to be true? Is this movie magic and CGI up there? You do have to wonder why if this footage didn't set the internet ablaze, because that looks about as flying saucery as anything could possibly get. Of course, maybe the men in black and the higher ups are trying to scrub this clip from the internet and don't want you to see, and maybe I just got the whole channel in trouble. Number 5. They say in space, no one can hear you scream. But what about a knocking? China's first man in space, Yang Liwei, might be able to tell you what the sound of a man screaming in space sounds like. The taikonaut, the term for an astronaut from China's space program, first visited the stars on a maiden voyage in 2003. While up there, soaring the cosmos, Liwei reported hearing something knocking on the spaceship's hull. He said it didn't sound like it was coming from inside the ship, but it didn't sound like it was coming from the outside of it either. Now, normally, you're not really supposed to hear, anything in space, so this was out of the norm. Liwei went to peer out the porthole just to confirm that there were no goblins or gremlins hanging on the outside of the hull ripping up nuts and bolts, and says he didn't see anything of any note outside causing the sound, which he claims sounded like someone banging on an iron bucket with a hammer. Now where it gets really interesting is that other taikonauts on the Shenzhou 6 and 7 spacecrafts in 2005 and 2008 both reported hearing the exact same phenomenon. One could be a coincidence, one can be explained off. But 3 separate occurrences of hearing something knocking on the ship's hull? Could it be something related to the shuttle's construction? Or is there something haunting the Shenzhou spacecrafts? Wait. Do you hear that? That knocking? It sounds like a transmission coming from inside the studio. Something, a voice telling me that you should subscribe to Top 5 Scary Videos for the best scary videos on the web. It's strange. I don't know what it means. Sorry, let's move on. Number 4. Now we know space is silent. I'd say no one can hear you scream, but I literally just used the alien joke on the last point, and I've hit my quota for 80s movies references already, and we're not even halfway through the list. I think the silence of the stars would drive me absolutely nutty. I don't know how I'd handle the quiet. I need something in my ears. In 1969, a triumvirate of 3 astronauts claimed they heard something pierce the silence. Apollo 10 astronauts Tom Stafford, Gene Cernan, and John Young, while on the surface of the moon, were photographing craters, making memories, that sort of thing, when all 3 of them unanimously claimed they had heard something ethereal on their headsets, claiming that they had heard a sound that was strange, melodic, and composed and otherworldly. All of them described it as music. Now, it's worth noting that it was 1969, so there was no chance that someone accidentally had just left an Aphex Twin album inside the ship's CD player. Commander Cernan said at the time, "We're gonna have to find out about this because no one is going to believe us. Don't worry. Just like the Ghostbusters, we're ready to believe you." And look at that, I snuck in another 80s movie reference without you even noticing. So what exactly was the crew listening to? Could it have just been something malfunctioning on the ship? Feedback from some equipment somewhere? Or could it have been some extraterrestrial entity trying to contact them, or getting caught on the airwaves? Now, some speculate radio interference, but not everyone buys the official story, and NASA has never given an official answer. The biggest question remains, though, is what does space music sound like? If I had to guess, I'd say probably like Grimes' music. I think that's what moon men are listening to. Number 3. When you think of an alien, what do you picture? A little gray thing with big black eyes peering out at you from a flying saucer? Maybe a regular looking man with pointy ears and a strong brow? Maybe a noble warrior with a cool energy sword? Point is, you probably picture something a bit bipedal because of sci-fi depictions, but it doesn't have to be that way. What about a snake? Space snakes. Why does it have to be space snakes? Dr. Story Musgrave has 6 degrees as a physician, former astronaut, and consultant for the Imagineers at Disneyland. Dr. Story Musgrave sounds like a completely fake man who has one of the coolest names ever, but he is very real, and he has one of the most impressive resumes on the planet. He can also boast that he's been to space on 6 separate occasions and has seen things you wouldn't believe. In a 1994 interview, Musgrave spoke out about coming into contact with something he believes to be extraterrestrial. He said, "I've seen a snake out there, 6-7 feet long. It's rubbery and it follows you for a rather long period of time. The more you fly in space, the more you see an incredible amount of living things out there. And that sort of thing brings to you a certainty that other living creatures are out there." Now, skeptics have dismissed this, of course, saying Musgrave just saw a hose or a loose bit of debris or something, but Musgrave insists that the entity he saw had its own method of propulsion and was following him around directly. He said he saw this creature on 2 separate occasions. Maybe it remembered him. Obviously, Musgrave is considered to be fairly reputable as far as NASA astronauts go, and I mean, if Disney trusts him, he must be pretty reputable. So it seems unlikely that he would tell a tall tale. When asked directly what he thought he saw up there, Musgrave said, "Living creatures far more developed as civilizations. They've been around for 100 million years, and we can't even conceive how advanced they are and the kind of things they're doing. That's why I make an effort to communicate. And I might be considered eccentric because I do, but I do tell them to come and get me." And you know what? Thank you, Musgrave. I'm glad someone is willing to be the spokesperson for aliens. Maybe offer them a ticket to Space Mountain. They might feel right at home at that. Or they might be very offended, I'm not sure. Number 2. Many who go to space see bizarre things that they can't explain. And yet many space travelers don't speak out about what they see, for fear of reprimandation, of being deemed nothing more than a tinfoil hat wearing loon. Russian cosmonaut Major General Vladimir Kovalyonok said on the matter, "Many cosmonauts have seen phenomena which are far beyond the experiences of Earthmen. For 10 years, I never spoke on such things." Well, let's take a listen to his story. In 1981, while orbiting outside of the Salyut station, Major Kovalyonok was exercising when he saw something traveling outside the station alongside the porthole. He claims he saw something outside the porthole that was an object he could not explain. He said it was something floating that looked a bit like a barbell, except it was transparent, and it looked like it had had something inside of it. He said he saw gas discharging out of it, like it was reacting. He insists that whatever he saw wasn't artificial, and that it moved in a way that suggested life. He said he saw it tightening and pulsating like an organ. He described the entity as being impossible within the laws of physics. As he was observing it, it combusted spontaneously in an incandescent ray of golden light. Seconds later, a golden explosion followed behind it, and 2 spheres of golden light appeared, which Kovalyonok described as beautiful. After the explosions, there was a white smoke and a cloud-like sphere, and as the station orbited around Earth's shadow, the spheres never returned. Unlike a lot of his peers, Kovalyonok was very willing to speak out on his experience about what he saw. There was a small investigation into the possibility that it could have been a missile test or a weapons test of some kind, but no conclusive answers were ever found. Whatever he saw, we may never get the truth. And to my Russian viewers, I am so sorry for that pronunciation. Number 1. Major Gordon Cooper is an American astronaut of some renown. The first astronaut to spend a full 24 hours in space, and the last American to spend a fully solo orbital mission. A renowned, reputable astronaut, he's very insistent about life beyond the stars. Near the end of a 22-hour trip around the planet in 1963, he claims that while ending orbit and returning home, he saw a glowing green ethereal orb following him approaching his capsule. The entity was even picked up by a tracking radar in Australia. And yet bizarrely, when he landed, reporters from NBC told him that they were barred from questioning him about the sighting and experience at all. This wouldn't even be Cooper's first experience with UFOs. In 1951, while on an Air Force mission flying over Western Germany, Cooper claimed to have seen metallic saucers flying in ways that would outmaneuver any American spacecraft. He said, "I believe these extraterrestrials and their crews are visiting this planet. Most astronauts are reluctant to discuss UFOs." Listen to this other quote from Cooper. "In the USA, every day our radar instruments capture objects of form and composition unknown to us. And there are thousands of witness reports and a quantity of documents to prove this. But nobody wants to make them public. Why? Because authority is afraid that people may think of God knows what kind of horrible invaders. We have to avoid panic by all means." Now, it sounds like Cooper is alluding to a cover-up. Gordon Cooper isn't just some nut on the street barking out to whoever will listen, but a respected, experienced sailor of the stars. So is this why most stories of UFOs get buried? And astronauts who speak out about it are all labeled as sensationalists? All because NASA thinks that people can't handle it? I think we're ready. I think the stories are starting to come out there. The truth is out there. And we will find it.
In 5th place, we have the lights above the New Jersey Turnpike. On July 14th of 2001, drivers on the New Jersey Turnpike stopped on the highway just 15 minutes after midnight, where they marveled at the sight of strange orange and yellow lights in a V formation over the Arthur Kill waterway between Staten Island, New York and Carteret, New Jersey. Carteret Police Department's Lieutenant Daniel Tarrant was one of the witnesses, as well as other metro area residents from the Throgs Neck Bridge on Long Island and Fort Lee, New Jersey, near the George Washington Bridge. Air traffic controllers initially denied that any airplanes, military jets, or space flights could have caused the mysterious lights. A national weather meteorologist could find nothing in the weather to also explain those lights. Luckily, when there's something strange in one's neighborhood, one can always call New York Strange Phenomena Investigators, or NYSPI. No Ghostbusters here. This band of inquisitive minds claim to have discovered the FAA radar report from Newark International Airport on the night in question that indicates an enormous number of airborne objects, without transponders, beginning at around 10:31 p.m. and ending at 12:51 a.m. EST. At least 15 people contacted the police department to report the strange lights, but Tarrant and other police officers are at a loss to explain just what it was hovering in their skies. Here's the thing. It's been 22 years since that incident now, and if there weren't any military folks in the air, and so many witnesses saw this, I'm leaning towards an other on this. In 4th place, we have the Alderney UFO sighting. On April 23rd of 2007, Ray Bauer, a 50-year-old pilot with 18 years flying experience, reported seeing a cigar-shaped brilliant white light in the sky. Now, he first thought that it was reflected light from greenhouses on the nearby island of Guernsey, before realizing it was a stationary object, approximately the size of a Boeing 737, at an altitude of around 2,000 feet and at a distance of roughly 40 miles. Bauer said that he approached the light and looked at it through his binoculars. He also said he saw a second object moving in formation with the first set of light, later stating it was around closer to the island of Guernsey. He said the UFO was clearly visual for approximately 9 minutes. After landing in Alderney, Bauer made an official report to the Civil Aviation Authority, labeling the incident as a near miss. He then flew the return leg of his flight to Southampton, but did not see the objects again. By the 25th of April of 2007, the British Ministry of Defence had stated that it would not investigate the reported sighting. Approximately a week after that sighting, the MOD stated the incident had taken place in French airspace, and so it was outside their responsibility. 2 weeks after that, the MOD released information connected with the report, including a statement from a second pilot. The report of the sighting published by the MOD reads in its entirety. First object was bright orange yellow, there was a gap in light or darker area. Second object was identical. Several passengers on his aircraft had noticed the light, one of whom described it as sunlight colored. In 2021, he said it was a very sharply defined, solid, bright yellow gold object with a couple of black bands on the side that were kind of shimmering. 2 passengers reported seeing the light to the Evening Standard, one of them describing it as an orange light, kind of like an elongated oval. Patrick Patterson, a pilot from the Channel Islands airline Blue Island, reported that he saw a similarly described object in the same approximate position. It was later reported that this pilot saw an object behind him to his left at around 1,950 feet. One interpretation of this event was that this was an atmospheric phenomenon. Despite the pilot's openness about the incident, the cooperation of the military, and countless eyewitness reports from passengers and people on the ground, the incident remains a total mystery. I'm just saying, there are too many witnesses for this to be anything fake. In third place, we have the Go Faster video. So this video, uploaded by the UFO investigative group to the STARS Academy of Arts and Sciences in March of 2018, was secured by a Freedom of Information Act request to the US government. So this video was taken in 2015 just off the East Coast by an FA-18F fighter jet, you try saying that 5 times fast, using the aircraft's onboard Raytheon AN/ASQ-228 Advanced Targeting Forward-Looking Infrared Pod, also known as ATF-LIR. I'll pretend I know what a lot of that means scientifically speaking, but a lot of big plain words. I know myself too well, I'll trip over my tongue if I try saying that more than once, so we're just gonna call it ATF. So ATF is designed to allow pilots to track, target, and destroy targets on the ground at ranges of up to 40 miles. It should be noted though that it's good at spotting, but not like engaging aerial targets. Alright, the video. So it's been nicknamed Go Fast by To The Stars, and it starts by explaining the various numbers and symbols that appear in the footage. Stuff like, the aircraft's altitude, which was around 25,000 feet, and the fact that the ATF was pointed ahead and to the left of the Super Hornet. The readout also explains that the aircraft was traveling at 252 knots and in a 5-degree turn, and the unknown object was approximately 4.4 nautical miles away. The video shows the Super Hornet's weapons system operator repeatedly trying to acquire the UFO with the ATF's built-in auto tracker, which apparently can pick out an object and keep it centered on camera. After 2 tries, the weapons system officer, or WSO, shouts, "Whoa, got it," to which another person, assumed to be the pilot, says, "Woohoo, whoa, what the bleep is that thing?" the pilot asks. The WSO later says, "Oh my gosh, dude," to which the pilot replies, "Whoa, what is that, man?" Now I know, this is where you skeptics start asking, but Alexa, how is this unknown object different from weird government aircrafts we don't know about? Well, alright. Allow me to explain, skeptics, since that's the whole point of this. For starters, the UFO does not have any kind of hot exhaust trail that would be emitted by a conventional turbine engine, so it doesn't really emit any heat on the sensor. And secondly, it doesn't have any visible wings or fins. So through my research, I've learned that even cruise missiles, such as the American Tomahawk or Russian Caliber, have small winglets that should be visible, and other missiles such as the Maverick anti-task missile still have stubby little fins. This UFO appears oval-like and does not appear to fly nose first in the direction of any kind of travel. So once again, this was a video hidden and released by the government. Hello, side-eye. In second place, we have a sighting in Alaska. Japan Airlines cargo flight 1628 was a UFO incident that occurred on November 17th of 1986, involving a Japanese Boeing 747-200F cargo aircraft. I'm learning a lot about planes today. The aircraft was en route from Paris to Narita International Airport, near Tokyo, with a cargo of Beaujolais wine. Wine. Focus, Alexa, focus. Over the Reykjavik to Anchorage section of the flight at around 1711, so place those cases said 511 over eastern Alaska, the crew first witnessed 2 unidentified objects to their left. These abruptly rose from below and closed in to escort the aircraft. Each had 2 rectangular arrays of what appeared to be glowing nozzles or thrusters, though their bodies remained obscured by darkness. When closest, the aircraft's cabin was lit up and the captain could feel their heat on his face. These 2 crafts departed before a third, much larger disc-shaped object started trailing them. Anchorage Air Traffic Control requested an oncoming United Airlines flight to confirm the unidentified traffic, but when it and a military craft sighted plane 1628 at around 10 to 6, no other craft could be distinguished. Captain Terauchi contacted Anchorage Air Traffic Control and requested, a change of course. The UFO followed the plane despite any of the captain's maneuvers. The sighting lasted 50 minutes and ended in the vicinity of Denali. All of the data, including ground radar that captured the unidentified craft, was collected and presented at a meeting with the FBI and the CIA. After reviewing all the material, the government officials decided that this was the first radar recording of a UFO. Yep, I didn't stutter. The government confirmed this. In first place, we have the Shag Harbor UFO incident. So this incident was the reported impact of an unknown large object into waters near Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia, a tiny fishing village on the Atlantic coast, on October 4th of 1967. The reports were investigated by the RCMP, Canadian Coast Guard, the Navy, and the Air Force, as well as the US Condom Committee. I had to research that because I first thought it was like a typo for condom, and I almost busted out laughing. Alrighty. Time for facts. At about 11:20 p.m. Atlantic Daylight Time, at least 11 people saw a low-flying lit object heading towards the harbor. Multiple witnesses reported hearing a whistling sound like, a large kaboom device, and then a whoosh, and then finally a loud bang. While en route to Toronto, while flying over Sherbrooke and St. John, Quebec, at around 3,658 meters from the Halifax International Airport, Air Canada officer Robert Ralph pointed out to Captain Pierre Charbonneau on Flight 305 that there was, something strange out the left side of the aircraft at 7:15 p.m. In his report, the captain reported an object tracking along on a parallel course a few miles away. He described it as a brilliantly lit, rectangular object with a string of smaller lights trailing it. At 7:19 p.m., the pilots noticed a sizable silent explosion near the large object, and 2 minutes later, a second explosion occurred which faded to a blue cloud around the object. Meanwhile, while standing at the wheelhouse of his vessel, Captain Leo Howard Mercy was looking at 4 blips on his Decker radar that were stationary. When he looked up at about 28 kilometers from the vessel's windows, he could see the 4 bright objects situated in a roughly rectangular formation. The entire crew of nearly 20 fishermen stood on deck and watched the object in the northeastern sky. Mercy radioed the Rescue Coordination Center and the harbor master in Halifax, asking for an explanation, and filed a report with the Lunenburg RCMP outlining his sighting when they returned to port. Over in Halifax, the Chronicle Herald and local radio stations reported a glowing object that was seen by many people who called their newsroom. They reported witnessing strange glowing objects flying around Halifax at around 10 p.m. Assuming an aircraft had crashed, within about 15 minutes, 2 RCMP officers arrived at the scene. Concerned for survivors, the RCMP detachment contacted the Rescue Coordination Center in Halifax to advise them of the situation and ask if any aircrafts were missing. Before any attempt at rescue could be made, the flying object, with the lights still showing, started to sink and disappeared from view, so a rescue mission was quickly assembled. Within half an hour of the crash, local fishing boats went out to the crash site in the waters of the Gulf of Maine off Shag Harbor to look for survivors. Here's the fun part. No survivors, bodies, or debris were taken, either by the fishermen or by a Canadian Coast Guard search and rescue cutter, which arrived about an hour later from nearby Clark's Harbor. By the next morning, RCC Halifax had determined that no aircrafts were missing. While still tasked with the search, the captain of the Canadian Coast Guard cutter received a radio message from RCC Halifax that all commercial, private, and military aircraft were accounted for along the eastern seaboard in both Atlantic provinces and New England. That same morning, RCC Halifax also sent a priority telex to the Air Desk at Air Force Headquarters in Ottawa, which handled all civilian and military UFO sightings, informing them of the crash and that all conventional explanations such as aircraft, flares, had been dismissed. The object was never officially identified and was therefore referred to as an unidentified flying object in the Government of Canada documents. Yep, that was the name. I'm just going to repeat this. The Government of Canada officially confirmed it as a UFO. 2 days after the incident had been observed, a detachment of Navy divers from Fleet Diving Unit Atlantic was assembled, and for the next 3 days, they combed the seafloor of the Gulf of Maine off Shag Harbor looking for an object. The final report said no trace of an object was found. Just saying. Fascinating that no one found anything, and that the government confirmed it was a UFO. So take that, skeptics.
Number 5, Las Vegas body cam. My dear ghouls, things are heating up in the sky lately, and the whole world is coming down bad with alien fever. If you're a UFO enthusiast, the odds are very good you've heard a thing or two about the recent sighting in Las Vegas. That's kind of building up to be a modern day Roswell with all the conspiracy and cover-up allegations. NASA's planetary defense officer, which, side note, I did not know was a real job, told Motherboard, a branch of Vice News, that a green fireball observed last month was not a UFO, but rather a small meteor less than a meter in size that landed smack dab in somebody's backyard. Now, the Las Vegas police officers who responded to the call say they didn't find any aliens in a manhunt, or alien hunt, I suppose is probably more accurate, but they do hope to find them in the future, citing the city's close proximity to Area 51 as a source of speculation. Now, the problem is that footage went wildly viral over the internet when a police officer's body cam was uploaded. We've got a little bit of this footage for you here today. It's kind of hard to make anything out of it, like most blurry alien footage, but it's fun to let our speculations run wild, and this TikToker seems adamant that you can see an alien over one of the cop's shoulders. Personally, I think it does look a bit just like a light or like a headlight or something, but you let me know what you feel like you see. The case has been captivating, with the callers, the 911 callers, claiming that they saw tall, non-human entities in their backyard with big glowing eyes looking at them. So what do you think, my fair and trusted viewers? Do you think these aliens got lost on the way to Area 51 to meet their friends and crash landed in somebody's backyard? Or was it just a meteor? Or did the aliens come from the meteor and the meteor itself was the UFO? Truly, who is to say? Who is to know? Hopefully we find out soon enough, and when we do, you better believe that I'll be the first to tell you. And if you're looking for way more videos about all things UFO and alien, oh my good gosh, do we have a lot of that on the channel for you to enjoy. Everything from conspiracies, cover-ups to UFO sightings, we've got it. If you're sick of hearing about Little Green Men, we've got all sorts of things on crime, conspiracy, everything scary. It's on Top 5. So hit subscribe, make sure you hit that little bell as well, and don't miss a single thing. but you get to do that at the end of this video for me, okay? Because I got 4 more UFO sightings coming up for you right now. Number 4, the Pentagon. We are at a truly exciting time to be an enthusiast of UFOs and aliens. It feels more so than any other point in human history that the discussion around aliens and UFOs is leaving the fringe sciences and starting to become accepted, commonplace by respectable employed people, not just folks wearing tinfoil. Recently, the Pentagon released a video of a reported UFO zipping around near an Air Force drone and revealed footage to, quote the Pentagon, everyone thought was truly anomalous, which is government speak for we don't know what the fuck this is. At the time, the object appeared to be moving with something propelling it forward, but a later determination would show that it didn't, which baffled and puzzled the analysts, as usually something propels you forward in the air. Now, this hearing was very interesting for a few reasons, but foremost, it allowed us a little bit of insight into how government agencies go about treating UFO sightings. We learned they categorize them first by what they most likely are, starting with the obvious things like planes or balloons, which account for like 99% of all UFO sightings. And then when it's something they truly cannot immediately identify, they prioritize where was it found? How is the object maneuvering? Does it seem like it's being driven? Controlled? Does it seem as if it has a payload? Does it have something attached to it? The hearing started by saying that the Pentagon currently doesn't believe that they have any definitive proof of extraterrestrial life on Earth, but concluded by saying that we'll be getting another disclosure document coming soon, possibly even as early as July. So we have huge, exciting things on the horizon coming up in July, and I'm not just talking about the Barbie movie. Number 3, Jorge Ortega. Is it just me, or are things getting crazier? Maybe I'm watching more UFO footage as part of my job, but it seems like every day we see more UFO sightings, like they're doubling, tripling over what they used to be. Yeah, admittedly, everybody carries a camera in their back pocket now, but it does seem like more people are checking out the planet. Ever since that streak in February, I feel like it's been an arms race for the coolest UFO footage. While pilot Jorge Ortega captures what some are describing as the best UFO footage ever, but I'll let you be the judge of that. He uploaded the video online, where it was found by an account called The Hood's Finest, where the clip went wildly viral on Instagram. Thank you, The Hood's Finest, one of the most trusted sources of journalism in these dark times. Let's take a look. It's definitely mysterious. That much I can say with complete confidence. It's really hard to tell what that was, but the way it speeds forward without any visible exhaust does make it seem highly suspicious. You can't make any details on that craft at all. Now, Ortega claims this was the most frightening experience of his life, and it's really not hard to see why. A circular, spherical, strange object flew directly in front of his plane, then whizzed by his window. Whizzed, like, you know what I meant. I shouldn't have used that word. Ortega and his co-pilot were flying towards Santa Fe when they first noticed the strange object coming towards them. The pilots believed that whatever they saw was non-human in nature, and definitely not a balloon or another aircraft. Ortega claims that the aircraft was traveling at an incredible speed of 300 kilometers an hour. I don't know how many miles an hour that is for Americans. You guys are gonna have to calculate that on your own. With the temperature at the time of the flight falling close to 5 degrees Celsius. With all that being said, it seems less likely that it's a bird or a balloon, and possibly something far more mysterious. As always, I love to hear your guys' opinion on stuff like this, so feel free to debate away in the comments if you think you've got an idea or an angle on this that I'm not seeing. We need as many eyes on this as possible. Of course, you can also just, I don't know, tell me something nice about your day. Tell me something that made you smile today. I love hearing about that too. Number 2, Chad Underwood. I think by now, if you're subscribed to the channel, and I hope you are, you've heard a thing or two about the Tic Tac UFOs that the Navy released videos of. In a lot of ways, these videos were kind of one of the first big steps for this recent surge of UFO, UAP stuff being taken kind of seriously, with these baffling videos leaked by the Navy that no one could explain. Although they were taken years and years ago, back in the halcyon days of 2004, the pilot who took the video has rarely spoken out about his experiences at all, for the understandable fear that he'd be lumped in with, quote, the little green men crazies that are out there. Well, I'm one of them, Chad Underwood, and I'm ready to believe you. Oh, Chad Underwood, that's the guy who filmed it. I don't know if I said that before. The story of the Tic Tac UFO began on November 10th, 2004, when radio operator Kevin Day reported seeing something odd and slow flying around the San Diego coast. It was moving approximately 140 miles an hour at a height of nearly 30,000 feet, so definitely not like any bird that I've ever heard of, and probably unlikely to be balloons. Commander David Fravor of the Black Aces identified the 40-foot-long white
oblong-esque object hovering and exhibiting no exhaust, propulsion, but seemingly darting itself forward at impossible velocities. It was Chad Underwood's footage that got shared and went viral. Via infrared camera pods mounted on the plane, we get sightings of these mysterious Tic Tacs in action. And I wish I had something different to tell you for the end of this point, something a bit more dramatic and exciting, but nearly a decade later, and we are still absolutely no closer to understanding just what happened here, what's happening in these videos, what these crafts are, but maybe we'll get there soon. Like I said, there's supposed to be a document coming up in July that's going to reveal all sorts of new research and information the Pentagon's been working on, and maybe that will be the big one, or maybe it'll just also be nothing like it usually turns out to be. But who knows? And number 1, California Army Base. We all wonder if military bases are hiding advanced technology, right? Like all of us do that, it's not just me. Like what kind of secrets could be buried underneath Area 51? Wouldn't you want to know? It definitely seems like visitors from other worlds are just a bit curious too, as there was a mass sighting of possible UFOs out in the California desert, right above a military base, one Camp Wilson. Was it a sign of visitors scouting out the area, or technology from within being reverse engineered by the American government? Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp are a pair of ufologists, and they revealed the footage on their podcast, saying that the video and photos were shot all the way back in April 2021, but didn't appear until now, where a series of mysterious lights manifested above the base for 9 minutes, prompting the Marines to launch a significant air and ground response. You know, just in case this turned out to be like an Independence Day kind of sitch. The Marines fired flares at the UFO, and the craft disappeared just before the flares could illuminate what they were. Classic, that's just like every single UFO story, you know, right before the good part. The hosts of the podcast go on to say that there was no media coverage whatsoever of the incident. I mean, I don't really remember anybody talking about this in April 2021, but I also don't remember April 2021, so I'm not a trusted source. But since then, nothing really has come out about it. They got the tip from someone at the base, from a person who was pretty high up, they quote. The tip was that there was more to this story that was being led on. Now, some viewers, some astute alien fans have pointed out a noticeable similarity between this incident and the Phoenix Light event in 1997, where a series of strange lights hovered over the city of Phoenix, witnessed by multiple people in the city, but unknown to everyone and to this day, unsolved. So what happened here? Just one more mystery we'll never get an answer to? I'm not sure, but I'll never stop looking. The truth is out there, and I want to believe.
Starting off this list in our number 5 spot, we have Project Grudge Report 13. Okay, so I've read quite a few different UFO sighting stories and stories of alleged alien abductions, and this is fully one of the most terrifying that I have ever heard of. So basically, the story starts off in March of 1956 when Air Force Sergeant Jonathan P. Lovett was assisting Major William Cunningham in the White Sands Missile Testing Grounds near Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. The pair were out searching for debris from a recent rocket test when Major Cunningham heard a loud scream. His first thought was that Sergeant Lovett had been bitten by a snake, so he went around to help aid his partner when he allegedly saw something he never expected. He recounted seeing the sergeant being dragged away by some sort of long serpentine arm that had wrapped around his legs. Whatever this creature was, it was connected to a hovering silver disc that was in the air about 15 feet away. The major stood there in horror as he watched this creature and the sergeant retreat into the craft, which then rose vertically into the sky. Of course, he radioed for help, and while he was taken to the hospital for observation, search teams were sent out immediately. It wouldn't happen until 3 days later that they would find the body of Sergeant Lovett, only 10 miles from the site where he was said to have disappeared from. The autopsy performed on him later also only raised more questions than answers, as his body was severely harmed. So of course there was an investigation that happened, and many people claim this investigation was detailed in a 600-page document labeled Project Grudge Report 13. But the problem with this is that no official information on Report 13 exists, and the US government denies its very existence. Though Grudge Reports 1 through 12 have been declassified, along with Report 14, no official mention mention or accounting of Report 13 exists, and the story solely relies on secondhand accounts of the horrible incident. In our number 4 spot today, we have the cigar-shaped UFO. Okay, so let's set the stage. It's 2:45 a.m. on July 24th, 1948, and there are 20 passengers aboard a twin-engine propeller plane that is at 5,000 feet, being flown from Houston to Atlanta by pilot Clarence S. Childs and co-pilot John B. Whitted. Out of the 20 passengers on board, 19 of them are asleep at these early morning hours, and everything seems to be going as per usual until it wasn't. The 2 pilots and the 1 passenger who was awake all witnessed the same thing about 20 miles southeast of Montgomery, Alabama. About a week after the incident, the pilot explained what he had seen by saying, quote, "It was clear there were no wings present, that it was powered by some jet or other type of power shooting flame from the rear some 50 feet. There were 2 rows of windows which indicated an upper and a lower deck, and from inside these windows a very bright light was glowing. Underneath the ship there was a blue glow of light. By his estimates, he watched the UFO for about 10 seconds before it completely vanished." The co-pilot gave a similar explanation and also added, quote, "The object was cigar-shaped and seemed to be about 100 feet in length. The fuselage appeared to be about 3 times the circumference of a B-29 fuselage. It had 2 rows of windows, an upper and a lower. The windows were very large and seemed square. They were white with light, which seemed to be caused by some type of combustion. I asked Captain Childs what we had just seen, and he said that he didn't know." Well, this is obviously all very strange and peculiar. What has driven UFO enthusiasts even more is the fact that this strange sighting was of course later investigated by the US government, but the results of that investigation have allegedly been mostly destroyed. Does that mean that they found something they aren't willing to share yet? Some believe that perhaps the pilots and the passenger witnessed a secret Soviet spy craft, while others believe it was definitely something of the extraterrestrial variety. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Lubbock incident. On August 25th, 1951, in Lubbock, Texas, a group of scientists from the Texas Technical College were all hanging out in the backyard of geology professor Dr. W.I. Robinson. They were all just chilling, enjoying each other's company, until around 9:20 p.m. when they saw something very strange. It was a V-shaped formation of 15 to 30 bluish-green lights passing overhead. They were completely confused over what it could be, but figured that the lights would likely reappear, which they did. About an hour later, the lights reappeared, and at this point, all of these scientists knew that they had witnessed something exceptionally interesting, but what was it? The scientists weren't the only ones to witness the lights either. About 350 miles away in Albuquerque, New Mexico, an employee of the Atomic Energy Commission's top secret Sandia Corporation, who had a high-level Q security clearance, had been sitting outside with his wife, quote, gazing at the night sky, commenting on how beautiful it was, when both of them were startled at the sight of a huge airplane flying swiftly and silently over their home. On the aft edge of the wings, there were 6 to 8 pairs of soft, glowing bluish lights. There were more sightings as well, all reporting a similar thing. The group of scientists began investigating, tracking the lights, which they witnessed 12 more times. They measured the angle of the lights, they tracked the speed, and they attempted, unsuccessfully, to try and measure the UFO's altitude. Here's the deal with this though. The government did end up investigating, but the official explanation for these lights is the most cryptic message I've ever seen. It read, quote, "I thought that the professor's lights might have been some kind of birds reflecting the light from mercury vapor streetlights, but I was wrong. They weren't birds. They weren't refracted light. But they weren't spaceships. The lights that the professor saw have been positively identified as a very commonplace and easily explainable natural phenomenon. I can't divulge exactly the way the answer was found because it is an interesting story of how a scientist set up complete instrumentation to track down the lights. Telling the story would lead to his identity, and in exchange for his story, I promised the man complete anonymity. Despite people claiming that the mystery has been solved, by this explanation, people are left with a lot more questions than answers. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Shag Harding Harbor incident. This UFO encounter is often referred to as Canada's Roswell, so I was shocked that I hadn't heard of it before. Basically, this incident took place on October 4th, 1967, when an unknown object crashed into the water near Shag Harbor, which is a tiny town in Nova Scotia. There were at least 11 people who witnessed this object as it crashed, and many people claimed to have heard a whistling sound followed by a loud bang when the crash took place. The witnesses that claimed to have seen the UFO were all doing a bunch of different things at the time. One couple was just sitting on their porch, but the two witnesses that really get me are a flight pilot and a ship captain. On Air Canada Flight 305, First Officer Robert Ralph pointed out to Captain Pierre Charbonneau that there was something strange at the left side of the aircraft. They reported an object tracking along on a parallel course a few miles away and described it as a brilliantly lit rectangular object with a string of smaller lights trailing the object. Shortly after they first noticed it, there was a large but silent explosion near the unknown object, and then 2 minutes later there was a second explosion, but this one faded to a blue cloud. As for the ship captain, Captain Leo Howard Mercy, he saw 4 blips on his Decca radar that were totally stationary. This led to him looking up to the sky, and that is when he saw 4 bright objects sitting in a rectangular formation about 28 kilometers from the vessel's window. He wasn't the only one who saw it on board. The entire crew of nearly 20 fishermen stood on deck and watched. A man named Laurie Wickens was another one of the witnesses, and he and some of his friends ended up calling the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, because they saw a huge object floating in the Atlantic Ocean about 1,000 feet off of the shore. This is all super weird, and not only the RCMP, but also the Royal Canadian Navy and the Royal Canadian Air Force became involved in investigation, but nothing was ever recovered or found. But it was also revealed that all commercial, private, and military aircrafts along the eastern seaboard were accounted for, so what could have all these witnesses seen? Since they have never officially identified what it was in the official Government of Canada documents, it is listed as a UFO. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Westall incident. Taking it back to 1966, we have the largest mass UFO sighting in Australia that at the time was largely ignored. This incident took place when over 300 students and staff members of a school in Melbourne all witnessed multiple UFOs silently flying through the air before they landed in a nearby field. Well, there's been a ton of speculation about this incident in the many years it's been. One witness account stands out among the rest, and that is the account made by the science teacher from the school, Andrew Greenwood. He was alerted to the UFO event by a hysterical student, and when he went outside to see for himself, everything changed. Previously a skeptic of UFO stories, Andrew's mind was abruptly changed when he saw, as he described it, a round silver object about the size of a car with a metal rod sticking up in the air. He went on to explain that suddenly 5 planes came and surrounded the object, all while more people were gathering to watch. He called what happened next the most amazing flying he has ever seen, explaining that, quote, every time they got too close to the object it would slowly accelerate, then rapidly accelerate, and then move away from them and stop. Then they would take off after it again, and the same thing would happen. This went on for about 20 minutes before the mysterious object just vanished. As weird as this all was, what was almost weirder was what happened next. Firstly, the headmaster of the school is said to have tried to put a stop to anyone talking about the incident at all, threatening severe punishment to any student or staff who was caught speaking about it, and when the Royal Australian Air Force contacted him, he refused to talk to them at all about it. There have also been stories of witnesses getting visits from people warning them not to speak of the incident. Andrew explained, quote, when he asked the physical education teacher to describe what she had seen herself so that he could compare it with his own observation, she just wouldn't say anything. Another witness who did talk to Andrew and described what she had seen in great detail, just 30 minutes later refused to speak to him and wouldn't say a word. Was this because of the threats from the headmaster, or was something else going on here? This is definitely one strange UFO story that leaves behind a lot of questions.
Starting off, we have the original Roswell sighting. One simply cannot discuss aliens, UFOs, or anything supernatural without mentioning that fateful summer of 1947. Rancher W.W. Mack Brazel had found wreckage on his property in Lincoln County, New Mexico, roughly 120 kilometers north of Roswell, sometime between mid-June and early July, describing it as rubber strips, tinfoil, and thick paper. The ranch had no phone and no radio, leaving Mac completely unaware of the ongoing flying saucer craze, so he gathered the debris and just pushed it under some brush to dispose of it. This was not the first instance of a flying disc spotting in the region, with several stories already being reported to the press that year. On July 5th, Mac drove into Corona, where he heard stories of silvery flying discs, and 2 days later, on July 7th, made the decision to bring the wreckage into the sheriff's office in Roswell. The sheriff called in the Roswell Army Airfield, which assigned the matter to Major Jesse Marcel. Mac brought Major Marcel back to the debris site, and the two gathered up more pieces of rubber and tinfoil, with the Major taking the materials home. On July 8th, Public Information Officer for the Roswell Army, Walter Hott, issued a press release stating that personnel from the field's 509th Operations Group had recovered a flying disc near Roswell. On that same day, Major Marcel took the material to his base commander, Colonel William Blanchard, who reported the findings to General Roger Ramey at Fort Worth Army Airfield. FWAF for short. General Ramey ordered that the material be flown to Fort Worth immediately, leaving Marcel to board a B-29 Superfortress to make the flight. As soon as Marcel brought the material to General Ramey's office, both Ramey and his chief of staff, Colonel Thomas Dubose, identified the material as pieces of a weather balloon kite. The weather officer on duty explained to reporters that ray wind devices were used at around 80 weather stations across the country. The balloons were attached to a 6-pointed reflective device that looked like a silver star. After launch, the balloon would expand with increasing altitude before bursting at around 60,000 feet, with pieces dispersing in their fall to the ground. Now, after the initial newspaper reports of 1947, the Roswell incident faded from public attention for more than 30 years, until the late 1970s, which brings us to February of 1978, when UFO researcher Stanton Friedman interviewed Major Marcel, whose statements contradicted those he made to the press in 1947, saying they wanted some comments from him, but he wasn't at liberty to do that. All he could do was keep his mouth shut. And General Ramey is the one who told the newspapers, the newsman, what it was and to forget about it. It's nothing more than a weather observation balloon. Of course, they both knew differently. Now, while he didn't elaborate on that statement, and I wish he did deny the popular theories at the time of any bodies being found near the debris. After the United States congressional inquiries, the General Accounting Office launched an inquiry and directed the Office of United States Secretary of the Air Force to conduct an internal investigation. A report released in 1994 concluded that the material recovered in 1947 was likely, keyword here, debris from Project Mogul, a military surveillance program employing high-altitude balloons in classified portions of an unclassified New York University project by atmospheric researchers. A scholarly consensus emerged concluding that the military had decided to conceal the true purpose of the crash device, allegedly nuclear test monitoring, and instead inform the public that the crash was of a weather balloon. The balloon had allegedly been launched from Alamogordo, Army Airfield a month earlier, carrying a radar reflector and classified Project Mogul sensors for experimental monitoring of Soviet nuclear testing. The Air Force reports were dismissed by UFO experts as being either disinformation or simply implausible. Yeah. Now, the scary part about all of this for me is counting how many times the government has changed its tale, expecting the general public to believe them each time. Which story do you believe? In fourth place, we have an anonymous report from 2013 from Athens, Texas. A retired military firefighter and commercial pilot, who was also a former astronaut, submitted his account of what happened around 10:15 p.m. on the evening of July 5th, 2013, to the National UFO Reporting Center, also known as NUFORC. He reported that he and his family were sitting outside, and when he looked up into the sky, he observed a fairly large orange glowing orb moving rapidly overhead at around 90 degrees of elevation. A minute or two later, his whole family spotted a group of 3 similar objects along the same flight path as the first one. The objects allegedly gave off no sound and seemed to glow from atmospheric heating. He and his family attempted to record the objects using their iPhones, although the grainy dark video was of no evidential use. A direct quote from him reads, "They moved much faster than orbital satellites, like the International Space Station, or airplanes, but much slower than meteors, and did not change brightness as a meteor would upon entering the atmosphere." So, if a former astronaut and pilot has no explanation for what he witnessed, what the heck was it? In the middle of our list today, we're discussing a San Antonio spotting of 7 donuts in the sky. On May 19th of 1952, an air crew flying an RB-36 reconnaissance aircraft reported spotting a series of, you guessed it, several donut shapes appearing in the sky, and were able to take photographs to accompany their incident report, which can be found in National Archives. The crew of 22 reported flying just north of Sonora when they originally spotted the phenomenon, stating that the plane was headed on a 301-degree heading at 18,000 feet, with relatively calm winds for that altitude. At 8:05 p.m., the objects appeared just to the left of the bomber's nose at a range estimated by the crew to be around 80 to 120 kilometers ahead. The objects were stacked vertically from approximately 25,000 feet to 60,000 feet. And even with all the photographs and drawings, there is still no definite answer as to what was spotted. In second place, we have the Washington Flap. At 11:40 p.m. on Saturday, July 19th of 1952, Edward Nugent, an air traffic controller at the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, try saying that 5 times fast, spotted 7 objects on his radar. The objects were around 24 kilometers south-southwest of the city, not following any established flight paths, and no known aircrafts were in that area. Edward's superior, Harry Barnes, a senior air traffic controller at that airport, watched the objects on the radarscope, later writing that they knew immediately that a very strange situation existed. Their movements were completely radical compared to those of any ordinary aircraft they knew of. Harry had 2 controllers check Edward's radar, and they found it was working pretty normally. He then called a National Airport's radar-equipped control tower, and the controllers there said that they had unidentified blips on their radar screen, and that a hovering bright light in the sky was moving at speeds they couldn't understand. Now at this point, other objects appeared in all sectors of the radar scope, and when they moved over the White House and the United States Capitol, Harry then called the Andrews Air Force Base, which was located around 10 miles away. Although they reported that they had no unusual objects on their radar, an airman soon called the base's control tower to report the sighting of a strange object. Airman William Brady, who was in the tower, saw an object that appeared to be an orange ball of fire, trailing a tail, saying it was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Now, where have I said that? Oh yeah. As William tried to alert the other personnel in the tower, the strange object took off at an unbelievable speed. On one of National Airport's runways, pilot S.C. Pierman was waiting in the cockpit of his plane for permission to take off. After spotting what he believed to be a meteor, he was told that the control tower's radar had detected unknown objects closing in on his position. Pierman observed 6 objects that he described as white, tailless, fast-moving lights over a 14-minute period. He was in radio contact with Harry during his sighting, and Harry later reported that each sighting coincided with a pip that could be seen near his plane. When he reported that the lights streaked off at a high speed, it disappeared on their scope. Now meanwhile, back at the Andrews Air Force Base, Staff Sergeant Charles Davenport observed an orange-red light to the south, where the light would appear to stand still, then make an abrupt change in direction and altitude, with the phenomena happening over several times. At one point, both radar centers at National Airport and the radar at Andrews Air Force Base were tracking an object hovering over a radio beacon. The object vanished in all 3 radar centers at the same time. At 3 a.m., shortly before 2 United States Air Force F-94 Starfire jet fighters, I'm really getting to know my airplanes today, from Newcastle Air Force Base in Delaware arrived over Washington. All of the objects vanished from the radar at National Airport. However, when the jets ran low on fuel and left, the objects returned, which convinced Harry that the UFOs were monitoring radio traffic and behaving accordingly. Now, the objects were last detected by radar at 5:30 a.m. The government later tried dismissing the events of that day on a temperature blip, but those who were present have been adamant otherwise. In first place, we have the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. Yeah, I know I said I'd be talking about UFO sightings today, but this event is a combination sighting and abduction that I couldn't leave off the list. The Hills were a married couple that lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Barney was employed by the United States Postal Service, while Betty was a social worker. They were active in the local Unitarian congregation, members of the NAACP, and Barney sat on a local board of the United States Commission on Civil Rights. Overall, they seem like pretty normal folks, right? The UFO sighting happened at around 10:30 p.m. on September 19th of 1961. The Hills were driving back to their home in Portsmouth from a vacation in Niagara Falls in Montreal. Just south of Lancaster, New Hampshire, Betty noticed a bright point of light in the sky that moved from below the moon and the planet Jupiter upwards to the west of the moon. While Barney was driving, Betty reasoned that she was observing a falling star. Only, it was moving upwards. Because it moved erratically and grew bigger and brighter, Betty convinced Barney to stop their car for a closer look, as well as to walk their dog, Dulcie. Barney obliged and stopped at a picnic area just south of Twin Mountain. Now by this point, Betty had dug out her binoculars for a closer look and described seeing an odd-shaped aircraft flashing multicolored lights travel across the face of the moon, believing it to be a flying saucer based off of stories she had heard from her sister. Now taking his turn with the binoculars, Barney thought it was just a commercial plane at first, but soon changed his mind because without looking as if it had turned, the craft rapidly descended in his direction, causing him to realize something was wrong. The Hills said they continued driving on the isolated road, moving very slowly towards Franconia Notch in order to observe the object as it came even closer. At one point, the object passed above a restaurant and signal tower on top of Cannon Mountain and came out near the Old Man of the Mountain. Betty testified that it was at least 1.5 times the length of the granite cliff profile, which was 40 feet long, and it seemed to be rotating. At one point, the object descended rapidly towards their vehicle, causing Barney to stop in the middle of the highway. The huge silent craft hovered at around 80 to 100 feet above the Hills' 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air and filled the entire field of view in the windshield. Barry stepped away from the vehicle and moved closer to the object, which he later said was roughly the size of a huge pancake. And that statement right there just made me hungry. Still using the binoculars, Barney claimed to have seen 8 to 11 humanoid figures peering out of the craft's windows, seeming to look right at him. In his report to investigator Walter Webb of the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, NICAP, Barney described specifically that the beings were somehow not human, but humanoid. In unison, all but one figure moved to what appeared to be a panel on the rear wall of the hallway that encircled the front portion of the craft. The one remaining figure continued to look at Barney and communicated a message to him, saying, "Stay where you are and keep looking." Barney had a recollection of observing the humanoid forms wearing glossy black uniforms and black caps. Red lights on what appeared to be bat wing fins began to telescope out of the sides of the craft, and a long structure descended from the bottom of the aircraft. Now, the silent aircraft approached what Barney estimated was within 50 to 80 feet overhead and 300 feet away from him. Not arriving home until dawn, the Hills stated that they had some odd sensations and impulses they couldn't explain. Now, extremely confused, the Hills said they tried to reconstruct what had exactly happened the night before, but their memories were incomplete and fragmented. Notice I did a little bit of a jump there. That's because we don't know what happened. After sleeping for a few hours, Betty awoke and placed the shoes and clothing she had worn during the drive into her closet, observing that the dress was torn at the hem, zipper, lining, and later noted a pinkish powder on her dress. Now, over the years, 5 different laboratories have conducted chemical and forensic analyses on the dress. This wasn't the only damaged items in their possession. Barney said that the leather strap for the binoculars was torn, but didn't remember how. The toes of his best dress shoes were scraped, and their watches were broken, and no matter what, never worked again. There were shiny concentric circles, so similar to the rings that you would find on a tree trunk on their car's trunk, that had not been there the previous day. Betty and Barney experimented with a compass, noting that when they moved it close to the spots, the needle would whirl rapidly. But when they moved it a few inches away from the shiny spots, it would drop down. 10 days after the UFO encounter, Betty began having a series of vivid dreams, which continued for 5 successive nights. She stated that she experienced them with a degree of detail and intensity that she never had before. And after the 5th night, they stopped and never recurred, although they occupied her thoughts during the day. Determined to recover their lost memories, the Hills opted to partake in hypnosis sessions. Barney recalled driving the car away from the UFO, but afterwards he felt compelled to pull off the road and drive into the woods, eventually spotting 6 men standing on the dirt road. The car stalled, and 3 of the men approached the car, telling Barney not to fear them. He was still anxious, however, and he reported that their leader told him to close his eyes. While hypnotized, Barney said, "I felt like the eyes had pushed into my eyes," a statement he would repeat each session. The best anyone has been able to rebut what happened was claiming stress and sleep deprivation as the cause of what they saw and experienced. I'll admit, I'm usually much more of a skeptic, but this seems pretty dang real to me. In 5th place, we have a 2014 secret mission in Africa. At the time, a NASA official confirmed that one of the agency's aircrafts had been spotted on an American military airstrip in eastern Africa, but like a series of US military officials, declined to say what the space agency's high-tech bird was doing there. Seriously, he gave the most legalese answer ever. Enjoy chuckling at this statement. "I really can't give you any of the details. You know, the airplane was there, you see it in the picture, but I really can't tell you what it was for." A big from me. Anyone else? The broad-winged white plane belonging to the agency was photographed by the satellite company Digital Globe, sitting next to some tilt-rotor aircraft at Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti. A NASA website that tracks the agency's 3 WB-57s shows that one of its planes, number 926, was on a foreign deployment from July to November of that year. A NASA handbook for the WB-57 posted online lists 14 international deployment sites for the aircraft around the world, but the American base that we just mentioned isn't one of them. The Pentagon declined to answer any questions about a NASA aircraft in Djibouti, and a spokesperson for the Air Force Space Command, which has a closer relationship with NASA, said they wouldn't have operational knowledge of a mission on the continent. AFRICOM, the U.S. military's Africa Command, would only say that aircraft from a variety of agencies and nations perform diverse missions from Camp Lemonnier in support of the U.S. and allied military peace and security operations in the region, which spans East Africa and the Mideast. A NASA spokesperson said that their WB-57 aircraft does a lot of work with a variety of different customers from the government, from industry, academia, including the Defense Department. Totally not suspicious at all. According to NASA's website, the WB-57s have been flying research missions since the early 1970s and continue to be an asset to the scientific community, with professional, reliable, customer-oriented service designed to meet all scientific objectives. A government website devoted to the converted old planes describes a mission in Costa Rica to explore the tropical upper troposphere and lower stratosphere, and another to collect cosmic dust from comets and asteroids in the Earth's upper atmosphere, among many others. A variation of the aircraft was used to gather air samples from above-ground nuclear tests conducted by other countries. Sure, only other countries. The military may be interested in more than just scientific objectives, since a plane can fly nearly as high as the famed U-2 spy plane and carry more weight, including an array of high-tech imagery and communications equipment. One previous mission was described by the head of the military's fringe tech specialists at the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency to the House Subcommittee on Intelligence as a kind of mass, three-dimensional terrain mapping. She said that a WB-57 was deployed to Afghanistan for a few months beginning late 2010 and collected over 70,000 square kilometers of terrain data, so information on about 10% of the country. This expert said she was confident the system could have mapped half the country. So a civilian who worked with the WB-57 program in Afghanistan and who asked not to be identified due to, reasons, told some folks that the plane is highly customizable, using sometimes one-off configurations depending on the objectives of the project. And for now, the military isn't saying any more. And whatever the mission was, it appears to be over. According to NASA, all 3 WB-57s are now back in the US, with their status listed as inactive. Let me know in the comments what y'all theories are as to why the plane was mysteriously in Africa. My guess, another Area 51 or Roswell incident that they wanted to keep covered up. In 4th place, the alligator problem. I don't really like talking about things that, off me, with, alligators, crocodiles, sharks, and spiders being a few that make me skittish, but for the sake of information, you folks are worth it. The Kennedy Space Center is full of the, scaly snappers. The center is located on Merritt Island, a small mass of land off of the east coast of Florida that isn't technically an island, but shh. Despite being the most famous landmark on the island, the NASA complex isn't the only thing there. There's the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge, which is home to 1,000 species of plants and animals. They home a variety of sea turtles, manatees, bobcats, bald eagles, and more. Oh, and we can't forget about the gators. So maybe one of the reasons why the space shuttle program was canceled was because people didn't want to have to keep, clearing alligators off the runway every time a shuttle came into land. Honest to goodness. NASA has the ability to restrict human access to the site should they need it, but how do you go about telling a man-eating reptile what to do? According to the agency, interactions between their staff and the gators is rare, but that's exactly what they would say. Next thing you know, they'll have hijacked a rocket. Okay, no. That was one thing I was very glad I didn't see when I took a vacation to Florida earlier this year, and I'd like to keep it that way. Thank you very much. In 3rd place, we have the theft and use of moon rocks. If anyone has ever read the book Sex on the Moon by Ben Mesrick, then you'll already know the tale of Thad Roberts and his plan to do something very interesting with a bunch of stolen moon rocks. And for folks like myself who didn't know until today, buckle in for something I couldn't make up if I tried. So Thad was a high-flying NASA co-op student with dreams of obtaining multiple degrees and becoming an astronaut. Oh, and he also had dreams of stealing some of NASA's most prized possessions. With help from a team of accomplices, Thad stole 101 grams of moon rocks, valued at a simple little $20 million from NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. For reference, that's slightly less than like half a cup for measurements, and that's about, $20 million. That's more money than I'll see in my lifetime. And hey, if that wasn't bad enough, he also pilfered some dinosaur bones from his university. As a newly minted dino fact expert, I tried finding out what dino the bones were from, but sadly my searches turned up empty, so I'm begging. If anyone out there knows, please tell me in the comments. Thad reportedly laid the rocks out on his bed and proceeded to get down and dirty with his girlfriend on top of them, hence the whole sex on the moon thing. The young man and his fellow thieves were caught in an FBI sting when they were trying to sell the other rocks and were sentenced to time in jail. Just when I think I've seen it all around here, I somehow find myself getting surprised. Boinking on space rocks? Oh, before I move on, during this theft, Thad contaminated the rocks, making them virtually useless to the scientific community. He and his buddies also destroyed 3 decades worth of handwritten research notes by a NASA scientist that had been locked in the safe. The absolute selfishness on display. In second place, we have Viking lander aliens. A woman who claims to be a former NASA employee claims to have seen evidence of the most monumental cover-up in space history in 1979 as she saw two human figures in spacesuits walk calmly towards the Viking lander across the Martian surface. So going by Jackie, she claimed to have been working for NASA, handling downlink telemetry from the lander, which was the first vehicle to send back images of Mars' surface. She and 6 colleagues were watching the Viking rover bustling about over various screens when she spotted, yep, 2 men in spacesuits, which were not the bulky suits they normally used, but they looked protective. They came over the horizon, walking towards the Explorer. Now, naturally, some folks have claimed that the humans may have just been there to polish the lander's solar panels, and yeah, this is my judgy face. It seems a little odd, considering that if, there were humans there, presumably they could just fill the lander with petrol instead, or, take the photographs themselves. Jackie claims that while the folks were maintaining the equipment, their video feed was suddenly cut off without explanation, and when they rushed upstairs to another control room for answers, the door leading to the room controlling the equipment was locked, with paper taped over every crevice to avoid anything being seen. Hello, suspicious red flag alert. Yep, waving my imaginary one. If you don't understand how scary cover-ups are and why this is ranked so highly, then I worry about how blasé you are. Other theorists claim there were secret landings on Mars in the 60s, and the Apollo landings were actually a cover-up for wider exploration of the solar system. Former CIA pilot John Lear claims that NASA landed on Mars in 1966, and that humans adapted to breathe the thin Martian atmosphere. Nigel Watson, author of the Haynes UFO Investigations Manual, said that these accounts of secret space missions seem to be growing in number and remind him of the infamous Project Serpo. Yes, I'll sidetrack. In November of 2005, a contact called Anonymous, who said they worked for the US Defense Intelligence Agency, started sending information about an extraordinary alien exchange program called, Project Serpo. Basing his claims on a 3,000-page document written in the late 1970s, he boldly claimed that 6 aliens were recovered from the Roswell crash. Claims that aliens, living and or dead, were recovered from the Roswell crash are nothing new, but in this case, it was stated that an alien survivor from the crash, called EBE-1, helped to organize 12 specially trained people to visit his home planet, Serpo, in the Zeta Reticuli solar system. This mission occurred in 1965, and they remained there until 1978. During their stay, 2 of them passed away, 2 remained on the planet, and the rest, after returning to Earth, have passed away because of the high levels of radiation they were exposed to on Serpo. I'm just saying, NASA has admitted that there are many things out there that we do not know about, and that UFOs are indeed real. So what else are they hiding? I swear, between them and the US government, I wish I could file like a million Freedom of Information pieces. In first place, we have Operation Paperclip. Alrighty, goofy word time. YouTube land doesn't really like a lot of the words to do with World War II, so bear with me while I talk about the Yahtzees and more. The Third Reich had built up a huge bank of scientists, engineers, and technicians over the course of World War II. And after, the conflict ended, the US wanted to use some of their knowledge for their own gain. Thus came Operation Paperclip, a plan to rehouse hundreds, if not thousands, of former Yahtzee scientists in the US and put them to work on various projects. One such project was, you guessed it, the early days of NASA. Conducted by the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency, it was largely carried out by special agents of the US Army's Counterintelligence Corps. One of the people brought over in Operation Paperclip was Kurt DeBoos, a former V-2 rocket scientist. He was transferred over to NASA in 1960, and in just over 2 years was named the first ever director of its launch operations center. From there, he oversaw hundreds of rocket launches and played a pivotal role in the preparations for the moon landings. At the time, President Truman spent 16 months before making his decision to approve Operation Paperclip. Several of the Paperclip scientists were later investigated because of their links with the Yahtzee Party during the war. Only one Paperclip scientist, George Rickey, was formally tried for any crime, and no Paperclip scientist was found guilty of any crime in the United States or Germany. Rickey was returned to Germany in 1947 to stand at the Dora trial, where he was acquitted. In 1951, weeks after his US arrival, Walter Schreiber was linked by the Boston Globe to human experiments conducted by Kurt Blohm at Ravensbrück, and to be safe, he immigrated to Argentina with the aid of the US military. In 1984, Arthur Rudolph, under perceived threat of prosecution relating to his connection as operations director for V-2 missile production to the use of forced labor from Middlework, renounced his US citizenship and moved to West Germany, which granted him citizenship. For 50 years, from 1963 to 2013, the Strughold Award, which was named after Hubertus Strughold, the father of space medicine, for his central role in developing innovations like the spacesuit and space life support systems, was the most prestigious award from the Space Medicine Association. On October 1st of 2013, in the aftermath of a Wall Street Journal article published on December 1st of 2012, which highlighted his connection to human experiments during World War II, the Space Medicine Association's executive committee announced that that award had been retired. Operation Paperclip remains a black mark against America's post-war activities, and NASA was unfortunately a part of it. It's a Nikki secret, one that doesn't get any easier to hear.
Number 5. The NASA Photoshop cover-up. The most recent of the incidents on this list is the accusation from prominent UFO hunter Scott C. Waring that NASA is editing archival photos to remove alien craft in an effort to hide the existence of extraterrestrials from the people of Earth. As evidence of this, he posted a photo from the 1968 Apollo 7 mission that he claims shows a UFO on his blog, saying that the craft he saw in 2013 had been edited out of the photo by 2015. As he himself put it, "Guys, I discovered this UFO back in 2013 and NASA used my website to edit it out by 2015. Now I have found them in the US National Archives. They have accidentally saved the original Apollo 7 photo with the UFO in it. The photo in question shows a black object seemingly floating below the Apollo 7 spacecraft and above the planet. The supposedly edited photo does not show the small black object." Waring expressed his concerns in the following quote, "This is 100% proof that NASA used my discoveries and used photo editing software to edit out the UFO and then add a lot of contrast to the original photo to cover up most of the detail. Then, to top it off, they no longer have the largest 5 megabyte size to download, but instead only have a tiny thumbnail of about 200 kilobytes in size. Its reduced size and quality has destroyed its usefulness. NASA has to be stopped. This kind of cover-up is very corrupt and deceitful to not only the American public, but the world." Despite these claims, the black mark can be seen in other official versions of the photo, and according to analog film experts, they say it is likely just an imperfection in the photo negative. As they put it, irregular shaped dull marks or roundish spots on the surface of your film are likely to be drying marks, caused by the droplets of water forming in the film's surface during the drying stage. These marks are typically seen on the film backing. Films washed in hard water areas are more likely to see this problem. Is NASA really altering photos in their archives in order to cover up alien life? Possibly. Is this an example of them doing so? I'm not entirely convinced. Number 4. The Space Fireflies. During the race to the moon between the United States and the Soviet Union, one of the landmark moments of the race was the Mercury Atlas 6 mission, when American astronaut John Glenn became the first American to orbit the Earth. As important as this moment was in the history of space exploration, it is better remembered by UFO enthusiasts for what Glenn saw out of his window during the mission. While Glenn was flying over Australia in the Friendship 7 capsule, he looked out the window and saw what he later described as fireflies. Upon seeing this, he radioed the following back to NASA Mission Control: "I am in a big mass of some very small particles that are brilliantly lit up like they're luminescent. They look like little stars." Glenn then tapped on the window and the fireflies seemed to react and flew away. NASA was of course worried that this was parts of the capsule heat shield collapsing, but thankfully for Glenn, this was not the case. Because the mission wasn't being broadcast live, the firefly story didn't get much media attention, being somewhat of an urban legend. However, when the next American in space, Scott Carpenter, also reported seeing the luminescent particles, NASA had an excuse at the ready, saying that it was caused by ice particles from the condensation of the ship's heat exchanger. While to most this would sound like a plausible explanation, John Glenn maintained until the day he died that what he saw could not be explained by ice particles. What did John Glenn see out his capsule window during the 1962 Mercury Atlas mission? Was it really ice particles? Or is NASA trying to hide the truth from the people of Earth? Was John Glenn right? Is it a coincidence that multiple James Bond films were also directed by a man named John Glenn? We may never know. Number 3. Shuttle Atlantis' close encounter. In an age of internet and live broadcasts, it is getting harder and harder to prevent information from reaching the public, with it usually being only a matter of time before secrets find their way out of the shadows and into the light. Such is the case in our next entry, which happened in 2006 during the STS-115 mission of the Shuttle Atlantis to aid in the construction of the International Space Station. The shuttle and its crew had successfully completed its mission and had almost completed the trip back to Earth when Mission Commander Brent Jett looked out the window and noticed, as he put it, some kind of reflective structure. He radioed Mission Control and told them what he saw, telling them, that what he was looking at, quote, didn't look like anything I've ever seen outside of this shuttle, that's for sure. NASA was worried that whatever the object was, it might be some crucial part of the craft that had broken off. They took control of the cameras that were broadcasting the mission to try and get a look at what Commander Jet had seen. To the shock of all the cameras, it saw 3 bright objects in the sky. The information was picked up by the media, and NASA scrambled to come up with a suitable explanation. They ordered an inspection of the craft to see if it was a broken off part of the ship as they had assumed, but could not find any evidence of damage. When the ship returned to Earth, another inspection was ordered, but once again, no damage other than a small micrometeor impact was found. NASA has never been able to explain what happened during this mission, and seem to have made no effort at all to solve the mystery in the years since. Or do they already know what happened, and simply do not want us to be in on the secret? As disturbing as that prospect may be, it would not surprise me to learn that it is the truth. Number 2. Gordon Cooper's alien adventures. Gordon Cooper is an important figure in the history of space travel, having served as an aerospace engineer, a test pilot, a pilot for the United States Air Force, and being the youngest of the 7 original Project Mercury astronauts. He was the first American to spend a day in space, the first to sleep in space, and was the last American to go on a solo orbital mission, and set the space endurance record when he traveled 3,312,993 miles in 190 hours in 56 minutes, thus proving that astronauts could survive in space for the length of time that would be required to travel to the moon and back. He was an extremely important historical figure, but unlike many other NASA astronauts, he was not shy about talking about the various experiences he had over the years with unidentified flying objects, and the government's effort to cover these experiences up. Gordon Cooper claimed that he had seen his first UFO while flying over West Germany in 1951, but that his first experience with government cover-ups came in 1957 while he was stationed at the Edwards Air Force Base in California. He had put a crew in charge of setting up an Ascania cinetheodolite, which is a photographic instrument used for collecting trajectory data of aircraft, missiles, rockets, and other similar equipment. The equipment was set up on a dry lake bed and set to take pictures at 30 frames per second as aircraft landed. The men later reported to Cooper that they had seen something odd and had captured images of a strange-looking saucer-like aircraft that hadn't made any sound while landing or taking off. The men were used to seeing experimental aircraft, but were unnerved at the sight of this saucer, which had hovered over them, landed about 50 yards away using 3 extended landing gears, but had taken off when they had approached for a closer look. Cooper called a special Pentagon number, which was meant for reporting such phenomena, and was told to have the film developed, to make no prints of it, and to send it to them in a locked courier pouch. However, as Cooper would later admit, they hadn't told him not to look at the negative before sending them out. He looked at them and saw incredibly high-quality images of the flying saucer. He had expected there to be a follow-up investigation, but never heard anything further. He tried to track down what happened to the images, but never found out, assuming that they ended up in the Air Force's Project Blue Book, which was the Air Force's official UFO investigation. He had to deal with more government concealment, this time from NASA, when he did his solo orbital mission in 1963. While being broadcast live on NBC, Cooper told Mission Control that he could see a glowing green object which was rapidly approaching his craft. The object was not an illusion and even showed up on radar, but when he returned to Earth, he was forbidden to talk about the experience any further with the press. The reporters brought in for the subsequent press conference for the mission were also told that they could not ask Cooper about the green orb either. Years later, Cooper would talk about this encounter more openly and discuss the fact that NASA and other government agencies were covering up several stories of UFO encounters. He even spoke to the United Nations on the subject, saying, "Authority is afraid that people may think of God knows what kind of horrible invaders. So the password still is, we have to avoid panic by all means." Did Gordon Cooper really see multiple UFOs during his life? And if so, did NASA and the Air Force prevent the public from learning about these visitors from another planet in an effort to avoid panic? Will there ever be a point in history where they trust the people of the world to be able to handle such news? Much like the identity of the flying saucer's pilots, it is unknown. Number 1. Did we even go to the moon? As we bring our video to a close, we must talk about one of the most popular NASA cover-up theories out there. While several people are convinced that NASA has come across evidence of alien life that they are keeping from us, or that they have even managed to make contact with extraterrestrials, there is still an inherent level of trust involved in those theories. The idea that NASA is covering up such evidence relies on the belief that NASA has really managed to send men to space. However, there are a significant number of people who don't even trust that this occurred, believing that man has never set foot on the moon. In the interest of fairness, let's explore this theory further. The gist of the theory is that while the United United States and Russia were racing to see who could get to the moon first, the United States government built a set and filmed fake astronauts pretending to walk on the moon, broadcasting the footage across the world and effectively ending the space race in their favor. Some theories even say that famous director Stanley Kubrick was hired after the impressive special effects in his science fiction film 2001: A Space Odyssey caught the eye of the US government. He was apparently hired to direct the allegedly fake moon landing. The evidence that people have latched onto over the years include shadows in photos that don't line up how people think they should, claims that the astronauts could not survive the Earth's radiation field, the lack of stars in the moon landing photos, and the infamous American flag that they claim appears to be flapping in the wind despite the lack of wind on the moon. Most, if not all, of this evidence has been explained by NASA, but once someone is convinced that the moon landings are fake, no explanation from NASA is going to convince them. Whether the moon landing is real or not, it is a good example of how the public's trust in a government institution can erode to the point where some people feel like they can't even take the most basic bits of information provided by NASA for granted.
Number 5, David Grush. So, if you've been following the topic of UFO disclosure closely, and the odds are good that you are because you're watching this video, you probably know the name David Grush fairly well. Grush is a former intelligence officer with years of dedicated service and involvement in UFO research who's been blowing headlines open with some of his shocking revelations, which, if they're true, would change the fabric of our world. It would change everything as we know it. We'd look at these days right now as the golden days, I think. I lost my train of thought there. Whoops. We'd look at these days as like the days before Pandora's box opened. We're never gonna be able to close that seal again. Grush served on the UAP portfolio for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency as well as the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which is a bureau for investigating alien sightings. So Grush has the credibility. But what is he alleging? In a recent interview with News Nation, Grush drops the bomb saying that non-human intelligence has visited Earth and it's recognized and known by major governments, claiming that in 1933 a craft was recovered by Mussolini's forces in Italy and then intercepted by the US in 1944, meaning that the Vatican helped suppress the knowledge of this and the Vatican is aware of non-human intelligence out there. In this same interview, and if you're interested in this stuff, you really should just watch it instead of watching me talk about it, Grush alleges that the US has recovered quite a number of alien crafts over the years, with at least 12 or more sitting in US reserves right now being studied, reverse engineered. Occupied bodies have been recovered as well. Now, fascinatingly, Grush says he wouldn't exclusively call these entities alien, saying they can be extraterrestrial or interdimensional creatures. He doesn't provide too much of a description on what they could look like, and obviously there's no photos, sadly, just that they're out there. He goes on to state that the infamous Roswell incident in New Mexico was absolutely real, and that everything since then has all been a concentrated, prolonged disinformation campaign to get people away from the subject, even going so far as to say the US participates in widespread mass disinformation, leaking true details alongside falsified reports to keep UFO discussion a fringe subject, preventing it from being taken seriously. And hey, if that's the case, US Army, if you want to throw me a couple bucks to spread some rumors and disinformation, my DMs are open. The full disclosure interview is absolutely fascinating stuff, and I highly recommend you go seek it out after this video. But, you know, before you do that, you could always spend a little bit more time on Top 5 Scary, since we've got lots and lots of alien and UFO videos for you to peruse and enjoy. And if that's not your thing, we've got something scary for everybody. Ghosts, goblins, ghouls, Frankensteins, true crimes, you name it. So hit subscribe, make sure you hit that little bell to not miss anything, but do that at the end of this video, okay? I got way more revelations and truths to blow open. Number 4, an Air Force engineer. Now, Grush's forwardness is inspiring others to come forward with their own full disclosure. I mean, if they won't, we have to, right? An anonymous source claiming to be an aerospace engineer added an addendum to Grush's interview on Reddit, claiming that they could corroborate some of his points. Take a listen, and obviously take a huge grain of salt as you're listening to all of this, as it is just someone typing on a computer, but I thought it was fairly interesting. As a current aero engineer for the US Air Force, 26 years and going, I can help you decode at least some of this interview. First, I know that Grush has only limited ability to talk about the subject. He did get clearance to speak to a certain extent, but he must withhold quite a bit in order to avoid very serious law violations. So, expect him to be holding back some things he could say, and this also necessitates rephrasing on-the-fly language he would normally use. Second, the retrieval program he talks about is real and is the most highly classified program in the US. The program is called Zodiac, and this may or may not come out to the public soon. Take this in when viewing the man's speech. He is trying to talk to us about the most highly classified project in the world. People have died, lost careers, lost family to the secret. So to say this is stressful to talk about would be an understatement. Should I be talking about this right now? Should I be talking about this? Am I gonna get the channel shut down? Third, when he shook his head talking about the spacecraft and alien, because we don't really think this is what they are. But this term is in common use publicly and is as close as we can describe the phenomena to general public and be understood. These things, these UAP, are much more than spacecraft. They are trans-medium interdimensional craft to the best of our knowledge. And the alien aspect, this is just the easiest term we have because we don't really know for sure what they are, but this term is close. At present, we consider most of these beings to be advanced biological AI. Ooh. Lastly, I can tell you from my own experience while on duty, these are real. I can tell you this because I was present on 2 occasions. I wasn't read into this program, so I can only tell you I was there on 2 occasions, happenstance, and they're as real as the nose on your face. Well, as you can see on my face, my nose is pretty real, pretty here, all natural, no work done on that thing. So that means this guy's story is real too, and a fascinating story it is.
In third place, we have the Belgian UFO wave. So the Belgian UFO wave began in November of 1989 and peaked with the events of the night of the 30th to the 31st of March 1990. On that night, one unknown object was tracked on radar, and 2 Belgian Air Force F-16s were sent to investigate, with neither pilot reporting seeing the object. No reports were received from the public on the date, but over the next 2 weeks, reports from 143 people who claimed to have witnessed the object were received, all of them after the event. Over the ensuing months, many others claimed to have witnessed these events as well. Following the incident, the Belgian Air Force released a report detailing the events of that night. Yeah, I'll backtrack, I promise. At around 11 o'clock at night on the 30th of March, the supervisor for the Control Reporting Center, or CRC, at Glans received reports that 3 unusual lights were seen moving towards Thorenby-Gembloux, which lies to the southeast of Brussels. Glans CRC requested that the Wever Gendarmerie send a patrol to confirm the sightings. Approximately 10 minutes later, some reports stated that a second set of lights were seen, moving towards the first triangle. Traffic Center Control tracked one object only on its radar, and an order to scramble 2 F-16 fighters from Beauvais Air Base was given. Throughout this time, in reports after the event, some people claim that the phenomenon was visible from the ground, describing the whole formation as maintaining their relative positions while moving slowly across the sky. And over the next hour, the 2 scrambled F-16s attempted 9 separate interceptions of the target. On 3 occasions, they managed to obtain a radar lock for a few seconds, but these were later shown to be radar locks on each other. After around 12:30 in the morning, radar contact became much more sporadic, and the final confirmed lock took place at around 40 minutes. After midnight. Following several further unconfirmed contacts, the F-16s eventually returned to the base shortly after 1 a.m. Members of the Wever Gendarmerie, who had been sent to confirm the original report, described 4 lights now being arranged in a square formation, all making short, jerky movements before gradually losing their luminosity and disappearing in 4 separate directions at around 1:30. During one of the radar locks, the UFO accelerated from 150 miles per hour to over 1,100 miles per hour, while changing altitude from 9,000 feet to 5,000 feet in a matter of seconds. After his retirement, Major General Wilfred de Bruy wrote in a statement that the Belgian UFO wave was exceptional, and the Air Force could not identify the nature, origin, and intentions of the reported phenomena. The Belgian objects have still never been explained. Look, Air Force folks are the ones to trust in situations like this. They're literally trained on how to recognize aircrafts in the sky.
Number 2, Corporal John Weingant. Now, if y'all remember to the last part of this video, not the previous thing I just talked about, but the last 5 parts I talked about it. Part 1. We spoke of the testimony given by the Marine Michael Herrera, who claims that he saw paramilitary forces that seemed to be American loading weapons and munitions into an octagonal, non-human looking craft while he was deployed in Indonesia in 2009. Now, the story sounded outrageous, kind of like the plot of a video game, but also sounded extremely similar to an eyewitness account from another Marine years and years and years earlier in Peru. Now, you take a listen to the statement by Lance Corporal John Weingant. Lance Corporal Weingant had been a Marine since 1994 and in 1997 was deployed to Peru. Alerted to a possible friendly ship that had crashed at 3 a.m., he and a few other Marines drove out to the crash site in Humvees to investigate. After hours of searching through the brush, they found a gash in the land where it seemed as if something super hot had cut through the land, claiming that it looked as if a laser had gone through with surgical precision. And at the peak of the gash was this huge craft, non-human in nature, aerodynamic but organic, looking bumpy, notched, and alive, and dripping an unknown fluid. Most shockingly, he claims that inside the craft, he felt like he could experience something communicating with him telepathically, saying that they meant no harm and were peaceful in nature and needed assistance. Now, he claims shortly after this, helicopters and men in black military uniforms took him away and threatened him into silence, threatening his family and his livelihood if he didn't comply. Now, he sat on the story for years, only speaking out about it years after. It sounds very similar to the story presented by Herrera. Now, do you think this is fact or fiction? The video interview seems very genuine, and the story seems complicated and very detailed for a hoax. Hopefully we know the truth on this, or hey, maybe it's better not knowing. And number 1, footage from the Hudson River. And coming in at the number 1 spot today is going to be some shocking footage captured on an infrared security camera on the Hudson River on a marina. We've talked a lot about shadowy governments, secret retrieved alien crafts, decades-spanning conspiracies, psyops, cover-ups, secret organizations, and I just thought we could all need a breather, you know? Something light, end the video something fluffy and fun, and it's about time I included one clip of a grainy, strange object darting across the sky that we can all argue about or speculate on wildly. It's the most fun part of UFO stuff. The clip is short and sweet and you get everything you need. We see a pretty clear view of a marina and then bam, right in front of your eyes. Seems like somebody hit the FTL drive, is taken off to a new galaxy, right? 12 parsecs away. Like what else could that be? Now I always try to play fair with the skepticism. Some commenters aren't convinced that this is proof of mass relay-based travel in starships, with some saying that it's as simple as a security camera bugging out, and if you'll pardon the pun, catching a bug flying close by at a particularly high speed. Leaves a trail because of the longer shutter speed being used by the camera at night. The object appears so brightly because it's illuminated by the infrared LEDs in the camera, which are designed to illuminate objects close to the camera at night, which all sounds very reasonable, but at the same time, now I don't know. Maybe it's just because I've been talking about aliens. Maybe it's because I watched the video slow down a few times, but it really seems like it's something just blasting off, you know? Blasting off like Team Rocket. The object appears out of nowhere for a few frames, shoots off into the dark, and then vanishes. It doesn't seem like a bug is what I'm trying to get across. But maybe that's just because I want to believe, you know? We're getting closer and closer to it every day. It's only a matter of time now before you log on to YouTube and you see Top 5 Scary uploading top 5 coolest aliens I've talked to personally, and the thumbnail is going to be me shaking hands with one. Look forward in the next couple weeks.
In 5th place, we have the Hudson Valley UFO wave. So between 1982 and 1986, around 5,000 eyewitnesses reported seeing V-shaped UFOs with multicolored lights flying near the Hudson Valley, just about an hour north of New York City. So the first sighting was made on New Year's Eve of 1982 by a retired police officer in Kent, New York, who originally thought that he was observing an airplane. And hey, it's New Year's Eve. Make of that what you will. When the craft passed above his home, he realized that it was moving far too slowly and quietly to actually be a plane. So while most of the eyewitnesses described a slow-moving V-shaped UFO, other reports said the object appeared to be circular and capable of moving at fantastic speeds or disappearing altogether. Dennis Sant, a husband and father of 5 who had worked in local government for 17 years, described it as a very large object made of very dark gray, metallic, and made no noise. The lights were iridescent, bright, and stood out in the sky, and they were 3-dimensional. It looked like a city of lights that hung in the sky. So Dennis and his family followed them until he was consumed by what he described as a feeling of fright. A few miles away, traffic screeched to a halt on Interstate 84 as a mysterious object hovered overhead. A police cruiser stopped in the middle of the road to radio in about this UFO. Ed Burns, a computer engineer and senior manager for IBM, was driving home on the Taconic Parkway and claimed that his radio was suddenly consumed by static. And when he leaned over to, adjust the dial, he saw the triangular ship. He said that the back had to be as large as a football field, and once again, there was no noise. On that same night, eyewitness reports indicated that the object was slowly moving north over the Hudson River Valley. 13 others saw it in Newcastle, and about 10 minutes later, Ed Burns and at least 20 motorists saw it near Millwood. 10 minutes after that, the phones began ringing off the hook in the police station at Yorktown, and didn't stop for hours. During another sighting, the UFO hovered about 30 feet above the Indian Point nuclear plant. The security supervisor was considering, kabooming the craft down before it disappeared from sight. A home video showing a light formation above Brewster, New York was taken on June 10th of 1984 by local resident Bob Pazzulli. The footage has since been looked at by a number of photographic experts who indicate that the movement of the object on the video seems to be one rigid object and not individual objects. Now, despite eyewitness reports and photographic evidence, the phenomenon was never properly explained. In 4th place, we have Roswell. Okay, look, whether you like it or not, Roswell is forever going to be associated with aliens and seen UFOs, and there's just so much that I wasn't gonna leave it off the list. So former CIA agent Oscar Wayne Wolf claims he saw both living aliens, retrieved parts, and remains of alien ships throughout his career. So he made these claims about Area 51, claiming he caught a glimpse of an extraterrestrial spacecraft and a living alien. So once again, he saw a UFO. The 77-year-old man was speaking to UFO researcher Richard Dolan, but concerned about giving up his true identity at the time, went by the anonymous. After he made his claim, it was then shared at the Citizens Hearing on Disclosure held at the National Press Club in Washington in 2013. So the agent is understood to have used a fake name throughout his career in the CIA, so the chances of his real name having been used in the account were never super high. He claims he worked for the CIA between 1957 and 1960, where he spent time at a military base in southeast US where they analyzed physical evidence. Now, in 2013, he thought he was about to pass away pretty soon, so he came forward for one more conversation. Yep, that one I mentioned a moment ago. He claimed that he was taken into Area 51 to look at items allegedly found and retrieved by the US government. He claimed among them was, a flying saucer that crashed and landed in July of 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico. Gee, where have we heard that before? He stated there were live aliens there and that he was taken to the S4 facility. In his statement, he described seeing different saucer crafts in the facility, with the first place he visited holding the Roswell craft, and it was, kind of crashed up, but apparently every alien that was in it died except for a few. And it was really strange because it looked like really heavy aluminum foil. And hey, that matches up with every other description we've had. He claims he viewed the autopsy film, where the colonel on screen said, what we've got here is a gray alien that we're interviewing. This man had no idea he was going to see this film, and he claims that the alien didn't look human as far as the skin tone and the overall shape of it, and the size of its head compared with a normal human. Oh, and after all this, he was obviously warned by the CIA to zip it. Look, we can all admit, something landed in Roswell. Ergo, a UFO did land there. Look, did I claim it was definitely an alien craft? I didn't claim that. Somebody else did. But look, it's definitely something of unknown origin. Ergo, UFO.
Number 3, Stephen Greer's disclosure. Dr. Stephen Greer is a renowned ufologist and a former physician intent on waking the public up and achieving that full disclosure. Possibly inspired by the surge of whistleblowing in recent months, he held a press conference with several key witnesses and testimonies that he believed would provide adequate disclosure and get the truth out there. Now, the whole thing is available online, and assuming we take all of these things as fact and it's not a very well organized grift, the secrets revealed within are life-changing. Greer claims that many different civilizations of extraterrestrials have all visited Earth, okay? Not just one species or one civilization, but lots. Now, he reports that as of now, no non-human entities have displayed an outward hostility towards humans, which is nice. That's one less thing to worry about. Don't have to worry about the Covenant coming in anytime soon. Like Grush, Greer claims that the US has had access to non-human craft, and they've been studying the tech for breakthroughs in weapons, in cloaking, propulsion, energy technology. Now, this is the really fascinating part, is a claim that one reverse engineered extraterrestrial technology is pre-programmed life forms, a sort of synthetic artificial life which are mistaken for aliens, described as biosynthetic AI, which sounds very similar to what the aerospace engineer was talking about in the last point. So maybe they share a Google Drive and they're getting ideas from each other, or maybe they're onto something. Another huge bombshell is allegations that within the US government, there's a shadowy clandestine group that was established in the 50s that operates free from the government's wishes, and they conceal alien tech and hoard it from the rest of the world to further their own goals. They're apparently very good at targeting and downing extraterrestrial vehicles and possess the tech and manpower to threaten security. Now, these are bold claims, but in this day and age, it's going pretty difficult to ascertain what's a bold claim and what's the truth actually leaking through the cracks. I mean, everybody's talking about biosynthetic AI aliens. Maybe biosynthetic AI aliens are out there.
In second place, we have the Westall UFO. So time to travel back to 2 days before my mom was born, so around 11 a.m. on April 6th of 1966, when an unexplained flying object flew around Westall High School in Melbourne, Australia. So Mr. Greenwood was teaching his Year 9 science class when a girl ran into the classroom shouting that there were flying saucers hovering over the football field. The teacher and his students rushed outside, where they joined around 500 students, teachers, and locals. What he saw was an unidentified aerial craft that was the shape one would see if you had, like a saucer, slightly tipped on its side so that you saw the middle section as thicker than the ends. According to him, it performed several different actions, including hovering at different times, able to accelerate and disappear out of sight before reappearing somewhere else. He said the craft was hovering 50 meters above the crowd, about 1 to 200 meters away, and clearly visible. More than 200 students and several teachers watched the UFO as it descended into a nearby field. Eyewitnesses watched the craft hovering around the school for approximately 20 minutes, and described it as being a gray saucer-shaped object that was about twice the size of a family car. Oh, and the Air Force reported that they were not in the airspace at the time of the incident. Just saying. In first place, we have the Cash Landrum incident. So on December 29th of 1980, Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and Colby Landrum were driving home from a night out when they saw 23 unidentified helicopters surrounding a huge diamond-shaped object that was hovering above the trees. So this all started around 9 p.m. while they were driving on an isolated 2-lane road in dense woods and saw a light above some trees, but originally dismissed it as an airplane approaching Houston Intercontinental Airport. Hey, as someone who used to live near Pearson Airport, trust me, you'll learn to ignore planes. A few minutes later, they saw what they believed to be the same light as before, but now it was closer and brighter. It said that it came from a huge diamond-shaped object which hovered at about treetop level, and that its base was expelling flame and emitting significant heat. So Vicky told Betty to stop the car, fearing they would be burned if they got closer, and both ladies originally got out of the car to examine the object, but Colby was terrified. So Vicky returned to the car to comfort him, while Betty stayed outside and was mesmerized by the bizarre sight. The object has been described as intensely bright and a dull metallic silver, once again shaped like a huge upright diamond, about the size of a water tower, with its top and bottom cut off so that they were flat rather than pointed. Small blue lights ringed the center, and periodically over the next few minutes, flames shot out of the bottom, flaring outward to create the effect of a large cone. So picture that. Every time the fire dissipated though, the UFO floated a few feet more down the road. But when the flames blasted out again, the object kept moving. So Betty said she had to use her coat to protect her hand from being burned by the door handle when she finally got back into the car. When she touched the dashboard, Vicky claimed her hand pressed into the softened vinyl, leaving an imprint that was evident weeks later. Investigators did cite it as proof of their account, but sadly the photos have not made their way to the internet. The group said that the object then ascended over the treetops and rose higher in the sky, and that a group of helicopters approached it, surrounding it in tight formation. Like I mentioned before, the ladies counted 23 helicopters and later identified some of them as ones used by military forces worldwide. With the road now clear, Betty says she drove on, claiming to see glimpses of the object and the helicopters receding into the distance. And they said it lasted about 20 minutes. A Dayton police officer, Detective Lamar Walker, and his wife also claimed to have seen helicopters near the same area. The witnesses claimed that after the UFO and helicopters left, Betty took the other two home and then, went to bed for the evening. But that night, they reportedly all experienced similar symptoms, although Betty to a much greater degree. They claimed that they suffered from nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, generalized weakness, and a burning sensation in their eyes. Also, really bad sunburn, which, ouch. Betty developed painful blisters on her skin, lost clumps of hair, and was unable to walk. She was released from a local hospital after 12 days, although her condition wasn't super better, and she later returned to hospital for another 15 days. The Landrums' health was somewhat better, although they did suffer from that lingering weakness, skin sores, and hair loss. The duo of ladies sued the US government for $20 million, and testimony of officials from NASA, the Air Force, and the Army and Navy were given. But on August 21st of 1986, a US District Court judge dismissed their case, noting that they hadn't really proved that the helicopters were associated with the US federal government, and that military officials had testified that the US Armed Forces didn't really have a large diamond-shaped aircraft in their possession. And seeing as no government agency whatsoever possessed an aircraft resembling this UFO, the case was dismissed. Well then, thanks for proving that this craft, whatever the heck it was, wasn't of earthly origin. And that brings us to the end of today's installment, and if I missed anything egregious, I'd recommend checking out part 1 before, letting me know down in the comments. I swear, every time I talk about UFOs, I learn something new. Heck, just today I learned that former US President Barack Obama confirmed that the government has footage of things they don't understand that they aren't releasing anytime soon, even though I wish they would.
Number 5. The craft's shot down. It has been a huge year for UFO enthusiasts like yours truly. Earlier, we got the release of the UAP reports from the Pentagon, which were basically the wildest documents in US government history, where the Pentagon confirmed they've been researching UFOs and kinda just slid it under the door like nobody cared. It made UFOs more than tinfoil hat talk, almost made discussions about it reputable. And I guess since then, that wasn't enough to keep us all entertained, as of last week, we've turned things up even more, since we've had 2 mysterious aircrafts shot down, and the United States and Canadian governments are being pretty cagey about it. So let's run through a quick timeline of what hopefully doesn't turn out to be Independence Day, and let's all pray we didn't kickstart an intergalactic war. On February 10th, a US fighter jet brought down a currently unidentified object soaring over the coast of Alaska. The object shattered into pieces after being shot down and was confirmed to most likely not be a balloon, according to the Department of Defense. I guess that's good to know, or not at all, since it doesn't answer anybody's questions. A White House official referred to the object as being the size of a small car, with enough room for a family of 4 to 5 aliens to fit comfortably, and you can put the back seat up and put some stuff in the storage. This would already be enough to fuel speculation for 10 years, and then literally the next day, February 11th, another unidentified flying object was shot down, this time over Canada, around the Yukon. That's the province that borders Alaska. A US flown F-22 Raptor shot down the second object, which was described as smaller than the first and cylindrical in nature. Okay, well, that's all the weird stuff that happened this week. Nope, because on the 12th, another strange object was shot down over Lake Huron. An object that first had appeared over Montana appeared on Sunday, which was then shot down. It was octagonal, apparently, and it had strings hanging off of it, but it wasn't carrying anything, so no one knows why. Maybe it was just an Amazon drone. Now, things keep getting weirder, I swear to you. Listen to this next part, you're not gonna believe this. When an Air Force commander, Glenn Van Herk, was asked directly on whether or not he thought any of these objects were alien in nature, he said, "I haven't ruled anything out at this point." What? I can't even speak, but the current sitting government officials are like, hey, maybe it's aliens, shrugging their shoulders. Is this it, guys? Is this it? They didn't specify whether or not these objects posed a threat. They said they just posed a threat to civilian air traffic, but the White House did say that these objects were broadcasting signals. I would say watch this space for updates, but really, just like watch regular space. At this rate, there's gonna be an alien every single day. But if you can't wait for any more, and you just wanna watch alien videos all day, I completely agree with you. That's what I do every day, and it's great. We've got loads of alien and UFO vids, NASA conspiracies, and hey, if that's not your jam, we got scary stories, horror movies, monsters, cryptids, true crime, baby, we got just about everything spooky under the sun and above it. So stay subscribed to Top 5 Scary, but most importantly, stay scared. But subscribe after, we gotta finish this video first. We got way more alien footage to get through. Moving on. Number 4, the Picket Post, Arizona sighting. Well, with all of this stuff flying around in the sky these days, is it any surprise that people are catching more weird footage than ever before? The UFO subreddit has been lit up like fireworks on the 4th of July with all kinds of alien sightings from all across the globe. Come take a look at some of the best ones I've seen this week. Hopefully they're new to you as well. Our first sighting comes to us from a redditor by the username of MaxKeller96, and they posted a short clip from Picket Post, Arizona that's got us talking. Take a quick little look-see. This is one of the better ones I've seen in a minute. Here's what the redditor had to say about the clip. My sister, dad, and I were out hiking near Picket Post when one of us noticed something glimmering near the mountain, so we stopped to take a look at it. All I could make out was that it was a small bright dot in the sky. After a good 15 seconds of staring, I started recording. It then dropped what looked like 2 flares, though my sister swears she counted at least 3. Up until that point, I thought it might have been a helicopter, as there's all sorts of army stuff out there, but there's no way anything can accelerate that fast. We all lost sight of it nearly instantly after the video cuts, and we were pretty freaked out about it. I've replayed it about 100 times, and I've tried showing it to everyone, and no one has any idea other than that it could be a super advanced drone. So, if you think you know, please let me know. Well, you heard the guy. If you think you have any ideas to what's going on, you comment down below or jump into the Reddit thread and participate in the UFO discussion. The UFO subreddit is great, and they're very friendly to new visitors. That's like their whole thing. They really want to welcome new visitors. Number 3, the San Diego sighting. The San Diego and Tijuana sighting, to be more accurate. Our next entry is a pretty interesting one, because it isn't just one offhanded sighting that happened in the middle of the night by somebody stumbling out in a bathrobe who's half awake, but it's a corroborated sighting that was happening seemingly across the cities of Tijuana and San Diego. And it wasn't even while Comic-Con was happening, so this isn't part of an extremely elaborate campaign for Ant-Man 4 or anything. So we either have a mass hallucination on our hands because there was something in the water, or there's some questions in the sky that need to get answered. So we'll play a few seconds of some of these clips and help you come to your own conclusions. On September 19th, 2022, several of these videos were captured of these bizarre light patterns darting across the sky. This is a massive sighting, so we can't quite dismiss this as a trick of the light or one isolated incident. There was definitely something weird flying up and around. What makes this kind of notable, besides from, how well documented this is I would say the pattern of the lights. They don't really follow like a flare pattern at all, so I don't think it's something that was dropped from an aircraft. When you watch it, they almost kind of seem to move in like a perfect unison, like flashy geese. The original poster who posted the compilation clip to Reddit added as well that another oddity they noted was that after the lights were seen and military fighter jets surrounding and circling the skies, probably to round up whatever was going on. So, comment section, I'll throw it back to you again. What do you think? Spy drones, weird paranormal lights, or is it just visitors? I think it's alien tourists who heard what a great time a weekend in Tijuana is and want to check it out. Could you imagine if aliens do come to Earth, but they're not really interested in like diplomatic relations or starting a war or anything? They're just like, we heard you guys party hard and we want in on that. Number 2, Michigan and Grand Park. Another very weird sighting coming from Reddit. This one was posted not even 2 days ago by a Redditor with a very funny username I can't read out loud on YouTube, but just know it was very funny. At first, it kind of looks like a piece of litter that somehow managed to get all the way up in the sky and is fluttering and darting all around. But if you take a closer look at it, it really seems like it's moving like it's being controlled. People in the comments of the subreddit quickly pointed out that a similar object to this showed up in Australia when this one's filmed in Michigan. Isn't that odd? 2 of these similar reports happening on almost opposite ends of the world. People in the subreddit theorized that this object in the video is one of the ones that was shot down over Lake Huron, which definitely makes sense. Lake Huron is, in Michigan. Could this be some of the last footage of this alien craft before it got burnt up? From this clip, I would say to me personally, it looks like some sort of hyper advanced drone, maybe more than a piloted craft. It looks very small, so unless there's like a really teeny tiny little alien inside there, I don't know. But with all cell phone footage, it's kind of impossible to ascertain the size of the thing. I think this one's pretty conclusive personally, and if this really is footage of the object that was shot down over Lake Huron, I would say the United States and Canadian governments agree with my assessment as well. But as all of these clips, please let me know what you think it is. If it's a drone or an alien or maybe just a really impressive kite that accidentally got destroyed. Number 1, the Columbia sighting. Now, our number 1 sighting is another international one. You think aliens are only going to show up around North America? Come on, expand your worldview a bit. If aliens invade, they're going to go after the whole planet. There's a whole lot to see, a whole lot of things they could burn down with lasers. And it seems like they were curious about the countryside of Colombia, because this footage out of Bogota, Colombia is truly out of this world. Seriously, this is like the most impressive UFO footage I've ever seen in my life. It was captured by a pro photographer who sent it along to a friend of his who's a YouTuber. Hey, reach out, let's collab. In the hopes of getting it to more eyes and people who can analyze it. And yeah, seriously, this is one of the most convincing things I've ever seen. Take a look. Now, I don't want to, poke the bear too much. I know this sounds kind of annoying. I am almost of the belief that this footage is simply too good. I wouldn't outright throw it away and discard it, but I can't remember the last time I've ever seen UFO footage where the craft in this question is this clear and easy to make out. You can almost like make out sci-fi parts of it, It looks to me like it wouldn't look too out of place in a cool video game like a Halo or something. If anyone's a Metroid fan, it reminds me a lot of like the ship that Samus flies around in. I'm just excited because they put Metroid Prime back out there. I think this raises kind of an interesting question and sort of a little like food for thought for debate. As camera quality improves and the average person is now at all times carrying with them a camera that rivals most professional quality, no doubt we're gonna start seeing more stuff like this. There's gonna be an influx of footage that starts to look much clearer, which then ironically ends up getting dismissed because it just looks too good and we assume it's been fake. We're used to blurry blobs shooting across the sky, and I think that's what we kind of think UFOs look like. It's a bit of a weird horseshoe where you kind of want alien footage to look bad so it's more believable. I don't know, maybe I'm just rambling, maybe it all makes sense, but let me know what you think about this one. I think this is absolutely nuts, and I think this is the most exciting time to be into UFOs and UAPs as a whole, because it really feels like we're getting a breakthrough pretty soon. But maybe I just want to believe. Well, that's about all she wrote, my ghouls and goblins. As always, it's been a total pleasure. Creep on creeping on, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one so long as I haven't been abducted. We're making better time on this one, eh? It all worked out. It all worked out for the best. Burpee boy. Why do I always like eat and drink directly before I do this? Here's what the Redditor had to say about the clip.